Often being a Nicolas Cage fan can be a lonely road. You may be listening to this podcast right now thinking, you know what? I'm the only one in my friend group who is a Nicolas Cage fan. You may think, my friends mock me. People mock me for being the only Nicolas Cage fan in my town. Fortunately for me, I was surrounded by over 100 Nicolas Cage fans on the 25th of September at the wonderful Prince Charles Cinema to experience, oh boy, and did I experience their all-night Nicolas Cage marathon, which consisted of The Rock, Con Air, Face Off, a mystery film, which turned out to be Drive Angry, and Mandy, in what I can only describe as a mind-bending, soul kind of changing 12 hours of Nick Cage mania. That night, I had all the intentions to interview people in between the breaks in the films. That didn't happen because I really underestimated like how it would feel to partake that experience and kind of overshot. I had all the intentions in the world. I went in with the best of intentions and it just didn't happen. However, I have managed to rope in 3 people who were there that night, who are Graham Jones of the podcast Nobody Asked For, Darryl Edge of the Cage Rage podcast, and Ian Harries, also of the podcast Nobody Asked For, to talk about their experience, how they prepped for the night, what they were kind of expecting of the night, how they found it, how they fared, and how they survived 12 hours of Nicolas Cage. So without further ado, I guess there's only one thing to do, and that's to get raging with Cage. So the first survivor of the Prince Charles Nicolas Cage all-night marathon to join me is Graham Jones from the podcast Nobody Asked For. How are you, Graham?
I'm good. I've just about recovered from Sunday, I think.
So how, well, before we get into how it was for you, because I'm not sure if you can hear or listeners can hear, like, my voice is, I don't know if it's sexier or if it's just like gravel and 2 ton of cigarettes, but I feel like shit.
It's like that the episode of Friends where Phoebe has the really bad cold. She thinks it makes her sound sexier to sing.
Yeah.
So afterwards, you might be trying to like lick tissues just to kind of get your podcast voice back. Sexy Petros.
That may be the case. Yeah, if people, I don't know, people. Oh, I really like that like Barry White period you had of like a fortnight. Can you bring that back? Yeah, and because I've recorded some episodes out of sync as well, it's all of a sudden going to be like, oh, it's sexy. Oh, he's back to his old voice. He's sexy again. So, but yeah, tell me about the podcast Nobody Asked For. What is it about? What made you guys do it?
Podcast Nobody Asked For is kind of, I say exactly what it says in the tin. I suppose it's not. We went into lockdown. As of recording, it's a year old tomorrow.
Amazing.
So we've got our birthday episode tomorrow coming out. So we've been doing it a year. It is essentially, the idea was Ian and I have ridiculous conversations about films all the time. In the hypothetical. So, one of our most recent ones, well, a few we've had is like, if you wanted to recast a movie with the Muppets, what movie would you choose, for example? So just all of these ridiculous hypothetical top 3 lists. I come with 3 movies, 3 ideas. Ian comes with 3 movies and 3 ideas. Talk through them, have a bit of an argument about who had the best ideas, and we give a top 3 at the end. The idea was the kind of conversation we'd have in a pub, kind of podcast we'd listen to. Let's record it. Let's see if anyone listens. And weirdly, a few people have. So it's been good fun.
Amazing. So as a question I always ask people when they come on this podcast, and it almost feels redundant to ask you, seeing as you're at a all-night Nicolas Cage marathon. But are you a Nick Cage fan?
I am. I've definitely been more indoctrinated recently since doing the podcast. Ian, who, when you speak to him, you'll find out he is. I mean, he's probably at a similar level to you and Darryl. I'd always I'd always known of Nick Cage. I'd watched a lot of films, like the classic ones. I think that everyone's kind of seen, like your Con Airs, your Face Offs, growing up, and then it was probably about 6 months ago. Ian picked Adaptation for one of his choices, and I hadn't seen it at the time of recording. But I said, "Look, I'm going to go away. This sounds awesome. I'm going to go watch it," because I think it was best movies that are about absolutely nothing,
Yeah.
basically. And I was completely blown away. And then in the same week, I watched Vampire's Kiss.
Wow.
And
yeah.
there's no that is either end of the Cage spectrum, and I love both of them equally. So yeah, ever since then, I'm all in on Cage.
I don't think I've shared this on the podcast. I don't know why, but like I recently had a run-in with the writer of Vampire's Kiss, because I tried to reach out to interview him, and
Right.
he was kind of nice of him to his research. He emailed me back and said, "Oh, I've actually listened back to your episode on it, like, and you guys weren't very favorable towards the film." And I was like, I kind of fired back saying, "Hey man, that was 4 years ago when I started the podcast. I was very it's cool to, do you know what I mean? It's cool to hate stuff. It's cool to be a big old meanie." And I was like,
Yeah.
I've genuinely warmed to that film as I've got older and kind of watched it loads of times and see it in a different light and stuff like that. And he never got back to me. And it's kind of like that thing of like, oh man, it's really taught me a lesson of being nice to people on the internet.
Yeah, I had an old boss once who slated Comic Sans on Twitter and got in an argument with the guy who invented Comic Sans.
Oh.
One of the best internet beefs I've ever seen.
I always see that thing with Comic Sans as well, when people dole out that fact, and people love to do it as well. And it's like, actually, Comic Sans is a font that's really easy for people with learning difficulties and ADHD to read. So you slating that font makes you like a bigot, and it's like, Jesus Christ.
Just didn't like your font, guys.
Yeah, exactly. It's a bit too cartoonish for me. So what would have been the exact first Nick Cage film you would have seen? Is there a kind of one that stands out to you?
I can tell you exactly where it was. I must have been, I reckon, 11 years old. I remember managing to convince my nan to rent me from the library, not even from a video shop at the time, from the library, a combination of American Psycho and Con Air.
Wow.
On VHS.
What a double bill.
Yeah, American Psycho absolutely scarred me.
Would make
Con
a perfect
Air,
double bill with Vampire's Kiss as well. This is a drum I've been beating.
100%. Because Nick Cage played Patrick Bateman before Patrick Bateman existed.
He crawled for Patrick Bateman to walk, right?
100%. So yeah, that scarred me for life. And then I remember, I definitely watch Con Air through a different lens now. The scene stepping off the bus is objectively hilarious.
Yes.
As a kid, Con Air was the coolest fucking thing I ever saw.
I'm of the belief that it is a comedy, because you look at the people it's got in it, people who are synonymous, do you know what I mean? It's got Dave Chappelle in it. It's and I like to think it's a comedy as well, because Nicolas Cage can't be doing that accent seriously. He's surely got to be doing it for laughs, right?
You'd like to think so. But then again, who knows with Nicolas Cage? Who knows?
Amazing. And do you have a favourite Nick Cage film as well?
Yeah, it's Vampire's Kiss. Hands down is Vampire's Kiss.
Really?
It changed my life watching that film.
Did you guys discuss it on the podcast at all? Can people like dive into you really delving into that film, or?
Yeah, so we have our normal episodes, which are the top three things, and we also do this League of Good Bad Movies thing because we love a good bad movie.
Yep.
So every month we put two up each. Listeners vote on which one we should watch. 1 month we did do Vampire's Kiss, which is when I watched it for the first time. So you can hear my unfiltered reactions to my first viewing of Vampire's Kiss. If you find that episode.
Perfect. I'll be sure to send people that way specifically in the show notes for this episode. So let's talk about the experience of going to
Yep.
the Prince Charles all-nighter. Was this your first all-nighter?
Second.
What?
So a couple of years ago, I did the classic horror all-nighter at the Prince Charles, which off the top of my head was Friday the 13th, Texas Chainsaw Massacre, Suspiria, Rosemary's Baby, and something else that I'm forgetting. But it was a great night.
So how did what was your prep for this one? Like, did you kind of like hold on to the mistakes you had made from the first one, perhaps, and like, this is how I'm going to play it? Like, what were your kind of like game plan going in? Were you like, I'm gonna fall asleep at some point, I'm gonna pick a film I'm gonna fall asleep through, or were you like, I'm gonna power through the whole night?
So the plan was to power through. I definitely had, through the first three films, there were like micro naps.
Yep.
Like I didn't miss big parts, but there were micro. But I've seen those three films multiple times, so it was okay. One thing I learned from the first time was don't make yourself too comfortable. So I'd gone with an ex-girlfriend to the horror one, and she'd like bought like a fleece quilt thing, and I mean,
I thought you meant don't make yourself too comfortable, and you took an ex-girlfriend. Like, do you know what I mean? Like, oh, this is gonna make me feel really uncomfortable, so I'm gonna stay awake. Sorry.
I'm gonna bring yeah. I mean, I'm divorced, so I could have brought my ex-wife if I really wanted to be uncomfortable.
That's the plan for the next one, right? If you really want to stay awake, you just got to bring an ex. Like, just invite a harem of ex-girlfriends and ex-wives. It's like you'll stay awake.
Anyone that's wronged you, bring them along.
Exactly. So
you won't be sleeping.
I'm not sure if you'll be watching the film. You'll kind of be like looking over your shoulder all the time, but at least it'll be an exciting experience.
Yeah. So, but yeah, because I know like on the website they're like, oh, you can bring, wear comfortable clothes, bring yourself a blanket, all that kind of stuff. If you want to stay up and watch all of them, don't do any of that. And you also have to tread the alcohol line very carefully. I don't know about you, but if I have like 2 beers, I'm going to sleep. So it's either a decent amount of beers and I'll be all right, or it's basically none.
So I kind of made that mistake. Well, no, I didn't make that mistake. I drank quite a bit just because because it was like my first like time out of the house, as it were. Do you know what I mean? In a long time.
Yeah.
Kind of like, it's going to the big city, baby. Like, do you know what I mean? I did the same mistake. I say that I did the same mistake with Fright Fest like last month, and it was like I just kind of, I'm in London. I'm at an event. Like, let's go to the pub, and then watch Prisoners of the Ghostland. I was like, people ask my opinions afterwards. I was like, I think I'm gonna need to watch it again.
From what I've heard, that's basically, even if you haven't been on a big session, you're gonna probably need to watch it again.
Yeah. So what were your kind of provisions that you brought with you for the night? What were your snacks? What were you drinking?
So we went, did a little Tesco trip beforehand. It was mostly sugar, and then sugar but in drink form.
Yep.
That was kind of all of it. I bought some like weird little bagel bite things, and the Prince Charles website was like, you know what's really good? Eat some fruit. So I was like, all right, fine, I'll buy some fruit. Didn't eat the fruit because because there were squishy Skittles and God knows how much chocolate to have instead.
Amazing.
But yeah, got through those. Got through about 3 energy drinks and a bottle of Sprite. Um, I felt it the next. I think I felt like the sugar hangover probably more than like the sleep deprivation.
So I said this with like as me and like Darryl Edge kind of like trundled our way back to Victoria Station afterwards. I said I just felt dirty. Like
Yeah.
I felt like I'd like not just like physically, but like morally dirty. I felt like I'd just like I don't know left an orgy or kind of like been
Mandy will do that to you.
oh yeah, or kind of had a night on substances and just kind of like that. Like yeah, like I think the feeling I got before like watching Mandy when it's like the sun was cut like already up. I was like, this is the feeling of calling a drug dealer at like that time of the morning, going, you still delivering?" Like, like that is how like, I've done that. I'm happy to say I've done that, and then, like I had that same feeling, and it's weird. It's weird that films can do that to you.
Yeah. And I mean, if any film's going to do that to you, it's
It's
Mandy.
mad. Yeah, yeah, of course. So, let's kind of talk about like the films that we're showing and kind of what was what was your expectations of the mystery film of the night?
So because everything was in like I had my wish list, right, and obviously Vampire's Kiss was up there. But because everything was in chronological order that they were showing it in, I'd kind of assumed, okay, we had like, I think it was about a 20-year gap, to be fair, but in the film is going to be in this 20-year gap. And I'd say Ian had gone with, I think, Gone in 60 Seconds, and that twigged in me. I did say, I wonder if it'll be Drive Angry, which obviously
It
it
was,
was,
yeah.
unfortunately. But there, yeah, that was one. I was really hoping it was going to be Willy's Wonderland because I've not seen that yet, and it looks fantastic. Um,
And it would have made
and
the
it,
night considerably shorter as well, because like 87 minutes long or something like that.
oh, is it? Yeah, that was the other thing. Like the first three, they're deceptively long movies.
Yeah.
Like I think all of them clock in over 2 hours.
Yeah, yeah. I think The Rock is like a good 2 hours 25 at least. Do you know what I mean? Like
It's a
it's a big
slog, isn't
slog.
it?
Yeah, yeah. But it's a fun slog. Like, but do you know what I mean?
It's
It's
a
like
fun slog. Oh, it's great. I mean, if for nothing more than the Rocket Man line, um, I'm gonna stay awake for that.
The thing is with the whole like Drive Angry thing, and I was kind of going through because I know that the Prince Charles had left out hints saying like it's a film we had never shown before, and then like
Yeah,
I think in my heart of hearts I was like a film I just wanted it to be, and it's not even a film that I particularly like, but it's Deadfall. I'm not sure if you've ever seen that film.
I haven't. No.
So it has probably one of the most off-kilter Nick Cage performances ever. Like if you've ever watched the Nicolas Cage loses his shit like compilation
Yeah,
video, it's the film that brought us him saying, "Hi fucking yeah," and just like it's just kind of like he's just this absolute maniac called Eddie King, who's obviously just this like coke addled mess who's just like just always like I don't just has these great lines like and I imagine in that atmosphere like it would have been amazing like if he said like "Viva la fucking France," the place the roof would have fucking like would have been taken off of the Prince Charles.
yeah, and actually, like the sad. I don't know if it was because of Drive Angry itself, but like I definitely noticed during Drive Angry, the crowd kind of started to thin out a bit.
W- Drive Angry for me, I was like when that got announced I was like I'm gonna catch some Z's. Like, and that's no slight to the Prince Charles. Like, I love them, but like, I was almost like by that point because I think obviously I didn't know I had a cold coming
Yeah,
beforehand, so I was like, oh, this is. I felt a bit ropey, but I didn't know why. So I was like, I think I'm gonna just try and have a nap here.
yeah. The other one that I was half hoping, and I haven't seen the whole thing, but is jujitsu.
Oh, yeah,
Um, so uh, Ian, I'm sure he'll talk about this when you speak to him, but he's in between houses at the moment. He's bought a house. They're waiting for it to come through. He's staying at mine, and he was watching jujitsu the other day, and I walked into the living room and it was on, and he just rewound it by about 30 seconds. Like, you need to watch this. Bear in mind, I don't know anything else about the movie. Just saw this bit, and there's Nicolas Cage is fighting this guy, and he starts talking about how he's old and how he needs to find like ways to be calm, and then he talks about how he folds hats out of
yeah,
newspaper, and then he proceeds to put the hat out of newspaper on his head and then continue fighting, and it's one of the best things I've ever seen.
yeah. The thing is that film, like Nicolas Cage, like brings that film up at least a star or two, just like,
Oh, without doubt.
and it's such a waste considering like the amount of like martial arts talent and kind of action movie talent they have in that film, and it must have been a lovely holiday to Cyprus. That's all I can say on jujitsu, really, that I haven't said already. Um, so what were your highlights of the night? What were the films that kind of like, or kind of were there moments in films like crowd reactions that really stood out to you, or yeah, what were the
So yeah, I think actually through the first three, like as I say, I've seen them all multiple times. um I've never watched them on the big screen, and
Mhm.
B, I've never watched them with a crowd of people who obviously appreciate Nicolas Cage.
Yeah.
So that level of like cheering and laughter and all that kind of stuff, it did elevate them. It's kind of like, I don't know if you've ever gone and if you've ever watched The Room at the Prince Charles,
No.
but
I feel like
that is an experience. Like, that's not just watching the film, that's an
yeah,
experience,
yeah,
and
yeah.
that's kind of what I liken it to, because everyone's just so into it, and like you get those reactions. And if I don't know, if they did a 20th anniversary screening of one of these films, or 30th or whatever it is going to be soon, at like a View or something, you're not going to get that reaction,
Yeah,
right? And
exactly.
but it just elevated it for those three. So I think that was massive. I really enjoyed that. Um, and then it was my first time watching Mandy. So so Mandy at 7 a.m. after no sleep for a good 24 hours was a trip and a half.
And the thing is that the first like 45 minutes of that film almost like goad you into like at that, especially at that time of the morning. It's like it's
Yeah.
goading you into falling asleep because it's all
Oh,
hazy and dreamlike
yeah.
and quite slow. And obviously, I think people have this expectation of Mandy to be some kind of like balls to the wall 90-minute like action revenge movie, like gory
Yeah.
as fuck, and it's not. It's a bit more contemplative.
Yeah. And it was just, and you're right, like the way it's filmed as well. You do, I mean, I was saying, Ian said the same thing. Like, we were sat there, and there's by this time in the morning, there's some like really dim lights on the side of
Mhm.
the walls at the Prince Charles, and as you're looking forward, you see these lights in the periphery, and I was convinced on multiple occasions during Mandy that there was like people standing at the sides of the rows, just like, I don't know if they were waiting to get in or whatever, and you keep turning around, like genuinely, like I don't know if I was hallucinating, maybe, but it definitely felt like it.
What was your first impression of Mandy? And I love the fact that that was your first time watching it, Graham. I love it.
I mean, it was. I'd gone into it as well, knowing very little about it, other than it was. I'd seen pictures of like the classic like Nicolas Cage in the car at the end,
Yeah,
like
yeah,
obviously, and because you could not buy the like $2,000 mask of it now as well.
yeah.
Um, but yeah, I didn't know what to expect, and then we got. I mean, we got like a conch shell that summoned a gimp biker who had like what could only be described as like tools strapped to his head.
Yeah,
Is kind of how I saw it.
I love that one of those actors who plays like the Black Skulls has on his IMDb just the name "fuck pig." Like that. Imagine that on your resume. Oh, what did you do in 2018? I played a guy called Fuck Pig.
I really got into the role.
Yeah.
Really identified with it. Yeah, but it's just it's one of those, and again, maybe it's because of when I watched it and where I watched it, but it felt, and it sounds really wanky to say it, but it felt like more of an experience than a movie.
Yeah.
Um,
No, I get that. I've watched it now like 4 times, and like I do feel like it is the type of I'm like it almost like works in that setting of kind of like because at 7 a.m. in the morning, you have no other like excuse but to just let the film almost wash over you as
yeah,
much as you can. And I think that is the best way to experience it. Is that thing of like leave kind of expectations to one side and just kind of like let experience the film as opposed to I don't know trying to like pick it apart or anything. And you can like I don't know you can
E-
put yourself into it. Do you know what I mean? Like it's the thing of like yeah. Once I realised that the film is about grief and loss, I just
yeah,
looked at it as like oh, I've had some like significant like breakups in my life and just looked at it through that prism and then I was like, "Oh, this is actually a real sad fucking like, do you know what I mean? Like heartbreaking film."
Oh yeah, it is extremely. I mean, yeah, it's weirdly you could double bill it with Pig, right? Like in terms of the stuff that it
Yes.
deals with. Um, but I think that the one thing that was so surreal about it, and again probably heightened by when I watched it, was the it's just that color palette. Like
Mhm.
it it's quite disorientating, similar to like in The Color Out of Space when it
Yeah.
kind of gets towards the end of that movie. Um, Obviously less llamas, but yeah, it was a hell of a way to experience it.
There's like I found myself watching that film. There's a moment when Andrea Riseborough and Linus Roach's faces are like melding between each other. And like I genuinely just like it's like I could feel my brain oozing out of my ears at that point because I was just like I've seen this on the small screen like yeah like 3 times before or whatever, and then like watching it on the big screen, I was just like I just don't know what is going on. Like, I just kind of like, throughout that film, I was like clutching my chest. I was just like, and I still felt surprised by it as well. Cause like, I don't know, like, I guess the disorientation of being up for so long, I was like, oh, this scene's coming next. And it's like, I'd forgotten a scene. I was like, like, do you know what I mean? And then like,
Yeah, yeah,
I'm watching like what I found interesting was that is like I don't know if it's like the kind of the crowd had thinned out and people had kind of waned a bit, but like it it had kind of lost all like crowd participation by that point, right?
yeah, yeah, absolutely. But and I think because even in Drive Angry, you have bits of it because it's so like over the top and ridiculous. But yeah, you're right. But I don't think you can like. I don't know that you could have crowd participate. Like Mandy, like you say, when you take it as the film that it actually
Yeah.
is, you don't, there's no like, it's not, you couldn't say like Connor's an action film, but actually it's probably a comedy. Mandy isn't, Mandy is Mandy. It's not Nicolas Cage leaning into like being Nicolas Cage.
I think it's that thing that there's that one scene that can get clipped out and kind of shown around as like a part of this like doesn't Nick Cage always freak out in movies, that scene in the bathroom?
In the bathroom. Yeah, yeah.
But then in context of that film, that makes 100% sense because it's like, if you had just experienced what he had experienced, like, of course you're gonna react like that. Do you know what I mean? Like, if anything, that's
Yeah.
underreacting to seeing the love of your life burnt alive.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I think absolutely. I don't know that I'd go and smelt a battle axe. But maybe if I had access to it, I would. But yeah, like that scene in the bathroom, like of course you have a freak out.
Yeah, yeah. It's I'm still trying to get over the fact that that was I kind of want to ask you if it was Ian's. I don't think it is, but I'll wait to speak to him before
Yeah.
finding that out. Oh, that's beautiful. What a way to see that film. I'm kind of jealous. um,
Yeah, I'm glad I did it. It was, as I say, it was definitely an experience.
but as we start to wrap this up, was there any like I don't know, were there any were there any grievances with it? Not the cinema itself. Were there any like patrons that did you nutting? Were there people who I don't know might have
Who could you be talking
took
about?
crowd participation too far?
To be fair, in my immediate vicinity, everyone was very well behaved. Even to the point that, and the one thing that annoys me in cinemas more than people talking is people getting their phones out,
Uh-huh.
because they're invariably really, really bright and your eye just goes directly there. So none of that. What I did hear, I think they were very close to where you and Darryl were sat,
Oh.
was that woman.
Yeah, I'm sure Darryl will be next up on the podcast, and you will be able to probably hear. Yeah, I'm not sure how long that segment is going to go, because I'm sure Darryl has a lot to say about that specific woman.
Yeah, it was just I think we were probably far enough away that it wasn't as annoying, but I heard a lot of like her saying stuff and her being shushed by people throughout the movie.
When you say people, a lot of it was me. Like, I think it's because it's like 4 o'clock, like 3 o'clock in the morning. I'm just like, shh, there is crowd participation, and then there is just incessant questions about things that the film will explain. Like, it's like, gosh, yeah.
Do you know what? That is my biggest bugbear of any whenever I'm watching a film with someone and someone asks me what's going on or who is he? What's that? I'm like, I have seen as much of this as you have.
Oh, yeah.
Let's see what plays out.
That is if it's like you're the first time watching it with someone, like,
Yeah.
it's
I didn't direct this. I didn't write it. Let's see what happens.
So, or if you're in the third act and someone goes, "So who's he then?" and it's like, "Well,
Yeah.
this is lost. Like, what is the point? Like, there's no point anymore. Like, you should have walked out at this point."
Yeah, absolutely. But yeah, no. Other than that, it was all pretty well managed. I can't say enough good things about the Prince Charles Cinema. We mention them on the regular on the podcast. It's one of my favorite places in the world, I think, but definitely my favorite place to watch a movie.
Yeah, I love it, and I'm always honoured in a way that I'm kind of like the podcast is somewhat linked to those guys because of being on the kind of same podcast network as the Prince Charles Cinema podcast. I often pinch myself to think like, oh yeah, I'm like kind of like I've gotten in there. Do you know what I mean? Like I just need to make the podcast bigger before I could do like a Caged In presents screening there, and that will kind of be like a bucket list item ticked off for sure. So
we have consistently said our dream would be to put on a screening of Midsummer at the Prince Charles.
Yeah,
that's what we'd love to do. So if you're listening, guys, hit us up.
I've got like a short list of like not maybe Cage films, but obviously like Coppola family films. Like there's a Francis Ford Coppola film called One from the Heart, and I would just love to show that because it's weird and like nobody talks about it. But that's probably why it's not being shown at the Prince Charles. So before I let you go, Graham, is there any advice you would give to anyone if they are partaking in a Nicolas Cage marathon or any kind of all-night film marathon in the future?
Just do it. Like it's out. Everyone I've said it to is like, you're nuts. Why are you doing this? Go sleep like a normal person. It's a lot of fun. Like, especially something. Yeah, obviously you're only going to do it for something that you really enjoy. So if you're really into Nick Cage films, go do it. It's one of those things that you will feel shit the next day, and you'll probably feel, or you'll contract a terrible cold and feel shit for weeks.
Yeah.
But um, but it's just a blast. Like, life's too short not to. We can finally get back into cinemas after a year and a half of not. If you can go see an all night marathon of your favorite films, just do it. And if you know Mandy's going to be on at 7 a.m. and you've not watched it before, make sure you don't watch it ahead of time because it's an experience.
Perfect. Well, Graham, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on the podcast and being a fellow survivor with you as well. I feel like we're kind of, our souls are bonded together for life now.
Forever.
The second Prince Charles Nicolas Cage all-nighter survivor I have with me is the Cage Rage host, my bitter rival, and a man who travelled all the way from Leeds to London to experience 12 hours of Nicolas Cage mania, Darryl Edge. How are you doing today, Darryl?
Hello, Petros. Thank you for inviting me on. I think possibly like you, I'm a little bit husky, as you can probably tell in the voice. Um, so you know, there's a saying in the cage community: you don't come out the same the other side, and that's physically, mentally, emotionally true as well. So paying for the sins of art
So,
right now.
yeah, so me and you kind of sat together throughout this whole experience, and the way the way I can explain our walk to the station after this kind of experiential night was like, I don't like two kind. It was like the beginning of 28 Days Later, just a couple of two zombified men just kind of like wandering the streets of a derelict London, just trying to look for sustenance and normality. And I,
Oh yeah.
I mentioned to Graham Jones about something I said to you. I said I just felt dirty, like physically. I was like just dirty in my soul. How did you like we'll start at the end and then we'll work our way to the beginning. How did you feel after the experience of watching 12 hours of Nicolas Cage on the big screen?
I mean, you you can't be the same after that. I don't care for what reason you went into it, what intention you had, whether this was technically a business expense for us or if you were just going as like a light-hearted laugh or something. This changes you as a person.
On a
I think
molecular level.
like I think that's exactly what I said to you when I came out. I said to you, Graham and Ian, the podcast Nobody Asked For, that I felt like every part of my DNA was pulling itself apart. Like I felt like I was on the cusp of crumbling into a fucking pale ginger heap on the floor of London, and that was going to be the end for me. Um, in some ways, that's the way I would have wanted to go out. I don't. It's like almost like a Jean Claude Van Damme second win before he roundhouse kicks someone out the window. By the end of Mandy, I think there was kind of like a small surge of energy. Like I felt like, "Oh my God, I've done it, and now it's light." And like my body was kind of like, well, it's morning, so we're supposed to be awake now. So I felt kind of okay on the walk back because I was walking back to Victoria. But I think the awful thing was just knowing that there was another megabus coach waiting for me. So like it didn't. It's like for me, most of us, we just peeled off. You get a tube, you get a train, you're home in like half an hour, 40 minutes. For me, there was the dread of motorways still to come. It was
I
genuinely an endurance marathon for me in many respects.
So I remember seeing like a tweet of yours, like maybe about 4 or 5 o'clock in the afternoon, when I'd kind of, I was already home. I'd had like a cup of tea and a shower, and just kind of curled up on the sofa trying to stay awake, looking after my son. And you tweeted something like, "I finally got home," and then it dawned on me. I was like, Oh yeah, fuck. I left Darryl at like, I don't know, 9:40 this morning. It's like he's had like a 5-hour journey home. Not only did he have a 5-hour journey home, he just had this wait at Victoria for at least an hour of just kind of like,
Oh,
oh,
man.
I don't know like what I'm gonna do with myself.
This was genuinely it. It's like, so we had like a nice little walk back from Leicester Square to Victoria, walked past Buckingham Palace, and there was little signs outside Buckingham Palace that says like warning, thieves operate in this area. To which I pointed at Buckingham Palace and said, "Yeah, the fucking Queen," which I had to high five myself for that. Really smashed it, I think. Um, so I think we parted about. It must have been about 20 to 10 or something, quarter to 10. So I was like, "Well, I've got about hour 15 until my coach arrives, so I guess I'll just mill around for a bit." So I made the very, very depressing decision to get a Burger King at 10 in the morning. It's just, it, it was it was the physical meat representation of how I felt. It just didn't taste right. It was oily. It was greasy. It was just sad. Just eating that burger at 10 in the morning was fucking sad. I couldn't get through it, so kind of just had to just throw it away. It was kind of like I almost felt hungover
I,
physically. It's like the morning after. It's like I couldn't eat. The thought of food just made me nauseous.
I don't want to repeat myself too much on this podcast, but I genuinely had that feeling of like, especially when the sun came up, like, and then it was like we got one more film left. Like going into Mandy felt like calling a drug dealer at that time of the morning, being like, "Are you still delivering?" Because it just felt like. And then when I came out at the end, it was like I feel like I've left, like, I don't know, like some sordid sex party to some degree. It just like something about me. I felt unclean. I felt like I couldn't tell anyone what I'd been up to. Do you know what I mean? If someone said like, oh, that feeling you have when you're like, I don't want people to look at me. I don't want them to know my shame.
Yeah, it was that weird. The morning after the night before thing of like coming out after Mandy and all the people who'd still made it through because a lot of people sort of peeled off throughout the night. Um and all the people like squinting because like the sun was out like a vampire just exposed to like the broken board in that old house and the sun like beams
Yeah,
through.
yeah.
And it was like this is wrong. Everything about this is wrong. This is spiritually wrong. This is physically wrong. I feel like I'm an affront to God right now. Like if I was just zapped by lightning, it would have made perfect sense.
I had that
And,
feeling. I feel like my like goodbye to anyone I'd kind of met, or like the people who were outside the cinema. It's like, even though we shared this experience, it felt like that thing of like when you've been at like an all nighter at like a house party or something, and it's like you just want to get out of there. You don't even want to like remember these people at all. You're just like, I just want to fucking go home. I want to get away. I want to have a cup of tea. Like, do you know what I mean? I just want to forget about this
yeah.
night. Even though, like, the thing is, like, I'm saying this and it sounds like I'm like, I had a terrible time. It's just that thing of like staying up so late, and it's just this weird, I don't know, feeling that came upon me of just like enduring all this Nicolas Cage in one night.
Yeah, it was like we'd all almost in a Mandy-esque way, like we'd all sort of supped from that sort of jar of like psychedelic goop, like we'd shared this weird abnormal trip. Um, it's like if you, I don't know, it's kind of like almost cultish in a way, which I guess a Cage fandom is.
Yeah.
We did a podcast, of course, but we're mentally ill, of course we are. But it's like it's it's like if you weren't there, and I sound this, I get this kind of sounds a bit exclusionary, and I don't intend it to, but it's like if you weren't there, then it's hard to describe what it was, what this experience was, and what happened, and what you were a part of in all of this. And I think for me, and I know like I sort of said it to, sort of the collection of us when we were outside, because, we sort of recorded this at the end of September. The 14th of September, I turned 30 years old. So by default, this is the best and worst thing I've ever done in my 30s. Uh, it's an incredibly high bar or low bar to set, depending on your viewpoint of a Nicolas Cage marathon. And now here I am with that little factoid as I enter this next decade of my life.
Amazing. Well, before we cut, let's kind of scroll right back to the beginning, and something I always ask people on this podcast, and it feels very, 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 very redundant to ask yourself this question, but are you a Nicolas Cage fan, Darryl?
Imagine if I said no.
Well,
Imagine if I said no.
you never know. Like, I wasn't the biggest Nicolas Cage fan when I started this podcast, and I think it's like made for an interesting kind of subtext and meta nature to the podcast as a whole, because it's kind of like I have been indoctrinated into the cult of Cage. Do you know what I mean? I've kind of like I'm very much like the Edward Malus of Cage fans. Like, I went to the island. I didn't know what was going on. Next thing I know, I'm being burnt in a wicker man, and I'm fucking loving it.
That's a lovely description. I think the short answer is like yes, I am a fan of Nicolas Cage. Like I say, of my own accord, my own volition. No one's paid me or got a gun to my head to say this. I do genuinely believe he is one of the greatest actors of our generation, maybe even the greatest. I unironically call him the golden hog of Hollywood because I think he's got a 24-carat knob, and Hollywood wants to churn that for all it's worth, and they fucking should. I think maybe 10 or so years ago, there might have been a sort of ironicness to my joy of him when I think this is around the time he had the Nick Cage losing his shit video, which is still one of my favorite videos on the internet. But for a long time, I was like the sort of the Nick Cage guy. I think every friendship group has got one. But now, as I enter this new dawn of life and arty farty things, I completely embrace that because I genuinely love the man. And having my own podcast, it's been an absolute. And again, this sounds very sort of namby-pamby kind of thing, but it's been a real journey
Yeah.
watching all these films and seeing this weird transition of once upon a time beautiful Cage in the 80s to action Cage, and then suddenly he just got old in the 2010s and he's had this old face for about 30 years. But I genuinely love the man. Anytime there's a new Cage film, it's exciting for me. And obviously not to go too much in a tangent to this, but to do a Nicolas Cage podcast, as someone who deals with like mental health issues and anxiety and depression and stuff, it's and this is not ironic. It's given me a weird sense of purpose. It's something I've found a genuine passion in doing, and it's a genuine joy to sort of be on this weird, well, as I call it, my journey to true Cage Nirvana. So the only way we'll understand him is by watching everything he's done, as you very well know, Petros, as you very well know.
Yeah, I'm further along the road to Cage Nirvana, and I'm not sure. Like, I don't want to give you a Wizard of Oz situation and let you know that there's just a man behind the curtain, Darryl. Like, 'cause that may not be the case. We are not at the end of the yellow brick road yet, but I totally understand your points of this, like this sense of purpose. Like, I'm somebody as well. Like, it may not come across on the podcast at all. I don't know. Maybe in the way that I kind of sometimes second guess myself and stutter on things. But like, yeah, I'm also an anxiety and depression sufferer. And like the joy I feel when somebody like I've never met from Adam says to me, like, I really like that thing you did. I'm like, that has like made my day. And I've gone into like doing podcasting on the thought of like, nobody's gonna listen. Anything above that line is an absolute bonus. Do you know what I mean? And like,
Yeah.
I think I'm not sure who I was talking to somebody recently, and they asked me about like individual stats for episodes. So like, oh, is that like, do you check that? And I was like, I just don't look at that stuff. And they were like, and they instantly got it, and they went, oh, because like you're mentally, you're or at least you're trying to be mentally well. Do you know what I mean? Because like I've fallen down that rabbit hole of like every week going, well, this episode didn't do as well as the last one. I must
Yeah.
hate myself. And it's like, that's not conducive to anyone's mental health.
I'm 100% in the same boat. I think because when I started the podcast, this was April 2020, which is kind of like COVID lockdown one. If you remember lockdown one, we've had about 58 lockdowns since then. But I'd been let go from my job at the time. I was like, oh, I just decided to do a Cage podcast. I had a microphone. I thought it just sounded like a good idea. Stuck with me for a few days because I'm usually a flight of fancy kind of guy. If the idea wanes, then I'm kind of like, oh, they probably didn't want to do it that much. This one didn't go away. And much like yourself, I made a very conscious decision at the start, and I was like, I'm just doing this for me. Like, I'm not going to look at the stats. I'm not going to let myself get bogged down by analytics and numbers and all of this. I'm just going to set myself a hobby, and just if I make this past 10 episodes, that's a win. Because I thought I would have packed it in, and I didn't. Because I was like, I'm weirdly enjoying this, and I've not because I'm such a hobby giver upper. I'm usually kind of like with music, there might be like a new song or an album or something, and I'll listen to it like obsessively for like 2-3 weeks, and then I'll find into something else, like these just intense waves of like short obsession. But now this has now spiraled into a almost year and a half podcast that's ever extending because Nicolas Cage will not stop making films, which is great for me and you. um, I did look at the stats once. I think it was on my birthday. I was like, you know what? I'm just gonna have a look. I'm just gonna have a little peek. And then it was like about 2,500 downloads since the start. And I was like, I don't know massively what that means, but it means that someone's listening to this. And I was like,
Yeah.
that's it's like, well, I'm not unhappy that I looked at it. It's kind of weirdly reassuring that there's been some reward for
Yeah.
this,
I
I guess.
yeah, like I think once in a while is conducive to just being like, I don't know, like, yeah, like healthy, like all the time is unhealthy. And like listening to you speak as well has very much made me realize that we are pretty much like the bizarro versions of each other in the way that like I very much am the type of person to kind of throw myself into something for like 2 weeks and then go like, I'm not gonna do that anymore, or like just kind of like flitter on to the next thing. So
Yeah.
it's good to hear that Nicolas Cage has not only brought us to some kind of level of normalcy, but also brought us together, Darryl. It's a lovely
Yeah.
thing. So obviously, yeah, you're a Nicolas Cage fan. It's a given. I would normally ask you what your favorite Nicolas Cage film is, but like I want to know what is the worst Nicolas Cage film you have seen, Darryl?
Oh boy. I suppose taking into account, I think at the time of recording, I'm probably up to, in terms of films, I've seen about 70 Cage films. I'm just finishing up 2014 on my own podcast at time of recording. Um, this is going to sound like an obvious choice. Left Behind was pretty bad.
Yeah,
Left
yeah,
Behind was pretty garbage. It's kind of like, I think that was one of the few films, and that was an episode I recorded like in October or December of last year or something. So I've been sitting on it for a long time, and listening to it back when I was recording it. I think obviously it's one of those things where it's so bad it has to make for a good episode because there's so many things to pick apart. But it just brought back the memory of just watching it on a day off from work on just a random afternoon, like at 1, 3 in the afternoon or something. And I remember distinctly one being baffled by the fact, I don't know if it is now, but at the time I was like, this is actually on Netflix. This is a film that is on Netflix. I didn't have to work or torrent this to find it. This is a film I can just get. What the fuck? And it's one of the few films that I think, paused about 4 or 5 times as it was playing to just put my head in my hands and actually at my TV shout, fuck right off. Um,
it's
it's just
bad, right? It's not like there's like a level of like fun bad, but it's just like, and it feels like Cage is like almost like scared to offend the Christians. Do you know what I mean? It's like, so he just like, he is a cardboard cutout of himself. He like, there is no Cage isms in it whatsoever. Like I think you're the same as me in like a proponent of believing that even the bad films, Cage will deliver something interesting. And that, I think that's the one where it's like,
Yeah.
even he just feels like he is like on the other end of a phone going, here's my lines. I'm Raymond Still. I'm a pilot heading to London to see you too. It's like, oh, fuck off.
Yeah. Yeah. I've never been privy to a film before that hinged on U2 as a plot point as much as Left Behind did. It's almost a blessing for Cage in that the film has about 20 different characters it wants you to feel emotionally invested in, all of which are vacuous pieces of shit
Yeah.
and just all equally very, very bad. Um, but I think his acting style is it's very similar to what you said. You know, like if you're trying to have a chat with someone, but they're kind of just glued on their phone, you're like, oh, this thing happened today. And they're just like, oh, yeah,
yeah.
yeah. That's his acting style. The guest I had on for it, Alex Keeley, comedian Alex Keeley, says he was the equivalent of tap water in that film, which I think is very very on point.
In a hard
Um,
water area as well. Not even good tap water.
tap water in a hard water area, and I've had my share of hard water. Um, but it's I'm sure there'll be some stinkers to come as well. But I think, like you said, even with some of the other just bona fide stinkers like USS Men of Indianapolis, Men of Courage, I think it was.
Yeah.
Weirdly long title. Even that one where he's kind of like, it's just a very bland cardboard performance from him. It's almost, I think the film is kind of redeemable because it's unintentionally hilarious when the crew gets attacked by sharks. But he's just kind of there, just being just like sad on a boat.
Yeah.
And then you watch an interview with him saying, "I've always wanted to act at a film at sea." Like, really? This was it? This was the film?
It's a very weird film, that one, because it is a story that is told in Jaws. So obviously it's based on a real story, and I think it's Quint who tells the story of being out at sea, being attacked by sharks, and kind of surviving. But like the film, like is like, oh, there's such a fun idea in that of like being able to like, I don't know, do this film about like people being stranded out at sea, but USS Indianapolis Men of Courage decides to go, you know what? Do you know what we thought was a good film? Pearl Harbor. And then it's like, do you know what else we thought was a good film? A Few Good Men. So it's like, we'll just kind of bunch up the interesting part of the story into the middle, and then we'll put Pearl Harbor at the beginning and A Few Good Men at the end. And it's a
Yeah.
really disjointed mess of a film.
Yeah, I think my favorite part, I think it's when it got to the credits and it was just them announcing that they screened this film for like the survivors of the USS Indianapolis. And I couldn't help but think, like, if you were one of those like surviving crew members, you'd think, this is my legacy.
Yeah.
This is it. And this random 2017-18 Nick Cage film, are you fucking? I watched my friends die, mauled by sharks, and and this is it.
Oh,
I couldn't find. It's like I couldn't find it anywhere. And I fucking rented that on Amazon as well. That film has my money.
I've got I think it's a sickness that I have this urge to own every Nicolas Cage film on physical media. So I own that on DVD.
Oh man, more power to you. Doing the Lord's work, so no one else has to own it. That's one person you've saved. So good on you.
So yeah, another question I would always ask is what was the first Nicolas Cage film you ever saw, Darryl?
To my knowledge, I believe it was Gone in 60 Seconds. So I would have been like 7, 8, 9, well, less than 10 when it came out. And I always thought this film came out like before Fast and Furious, and it didn't, which blew my mind. So, like in my head, I was like, "Well, this clearly inspired the Fast and Furious franchise." But I remember like friends renting it and like stopping around their house, and I think that they sort of had I guess a thing for cars, as I guess some preteen boys did back then. I was never really into cars myself, but I just remember it being a silly action film where some cars were driven. So that was kind of my first memory of him. And I remember thinking the film was all right. Obviously, watching it, the joy of nostalgia going back to some of these films later on. You're like, this isn't this isn't the film I remembered. I forgot Christopher Eccleston was in it. I completely forgot Christopher Eccleston was the bad guy in that film.
That has to have like that weird quirk that he whittles, doesn't he? He's like a carpenter, and that's like his quirk as a villain. It's a very bizarre film, and I hate to pull rank here and kind of show you up, Daryl, but Gone in 60 Seconds predates Fast and the Furious. I don't mean to assert my dominance as the as the Cage scholar who knows the release dates, but Fast and Furious was 2001. Gone in 60 Seconds was 2000, baby.
I always knew you were a piece of shit, Petros. I always knew that about you. This is why people say that we should start beef.
Yeah, why do you think I was so nice to you on the Saturday of the marathon, Daryl? What's the famous saying? Keep your keep your friends close and your enemies closer.
Friends close and rival podcasters closer.
Yeah, no, I'm only messing with you. No, just because as you were saying it, it really I was like, did it? Did it? Like,
this is the thing. They released it's kind of close together, and like in my head for ages, I was like, I always thought Fast and Furious released first because then it was just Fast and Furious and Fast and Furious and Fast and Furious. So I think for a while, I thought that like Gone in 60 Seconds was kind of just a Fast and Furious inspired knockoff, and it just wasn't. It wasn't. Actually Fast and Furious was a Gone in 60-second knockoff, and I'm gonna stick with that until my dying day. Take that.
The thing is, I always think about a like alternative reality where that becomes a franchise, where it's Memphis Reigns and his like band of merry men taking on all of like, I don't know, taking on the world and the world's ills. They're going to Dubai, they're going wherever and whenever they like, they're going to space. But instead we got Vin Diesel and his band of merry chumps.
Yeah, in a different timeline, it would have been Nicolas Cage saying that the most powerful thing is family. We were so close to Nicolas Cage being the forefront of a franchise. What could have been?
What could have been? That's a perfect entry. But were you enamored then, or did it take some time for you to become enamored to Nicolas Cage?
I think it took some time. I think I always knew who he was because he was kind of like ever present.
Yep.
But I don't think I think at that point in my life, I wasn't watching a film just for the actor or actress. It was just, or certain person or people. It was just watching a film for a film's sake. So I'm trying to think what film it would have been that really sort of put him on the radar. 'Cause I mean, like I said, with the Nicolas Cage losing his shit video, I was like, he, this is a lot of screaming for one man. Has he really done this much losing of shit? So I think I was always aware of him in the background and sort of aware of, the Wicker Man when that came out being like just a memeable shit fest, for better or worse. I think it wasn't until really I went to sort of uni that I became a bit more enamored with him because that's what happens when you go to uni. I guess you just kind of find find things that are weird. I remember like there was a friend of mine at uni, Andy Field, who I had on the episode for the podcast. I think it was my first or second year. I think we'd had like a falling out for some reason, but instead of being in his third year and doing his dissertation, he took the time to personally re-edit the entirety of The Wicker Man, so it was just Nicolas Cage scenes.
Amazing.
And it was just a ride, an absolute ride. So I've just sort of, I think, just grown in admiration for him as time has gone by.
Definitely. That sounds like has he still got that edit? I would love to see that. I'm trying to think how long it would be. Like, I don't know, Cage is in that film quite a lot, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think he was working on it for a few days, and when there was just like a DVD on the floor of like my second year house. Um, and I started watching it. I was like, I know what this is now, and I was kind of like the effort. This is almost like the modern day equivalent of making someone you like a mixtape. I was like, the effort that's gone into this. I was like, I can't be mad at you for this. Like this is like we are absolutely good. This is a lifetime pass as far as I'm concerned. I don't know if he has the edit anymore. I think it's one of his old computers. I wouldn't expect him to
No,
have the
no,
edit
you wouldn't expect it.
anymore.
That's the type of thing that needs to be like burnt on a hard drive and just kind of thrown away. Like it's like the mistakes you made in your past. So obviously we're
Yeah.
here to talk about the Prince Charles All Night Nicolas Cage marathon, and one of the things I wanted to know was how did you prep yourself? Was this your first all night marathon?
It was. It was. I don't know if there was any prep, to be honest. It was kind of a very last minute thing for me to go because I was kind of eyeing it up and kind of considering it. And it was basically the Friday, the day before that I got my ticket and booked my coach down because my girlfriend was ill. So I was like, well, what if it's COVID? We're gonna have to sort of call it off. And then I think it was the helpful tweet from the Prince Charles Twitter account saying, you should get fruits and waters and stuff. So just bundled a few things when I was in London on the day. I think looking back, I wish I'd brought like some it's like jog bottoms or shorts or something to get a bit more comfortable with. But this was like a very much a I think it's like the first time you do like a festival or something. You're not going to get it right on the first festival. You're
Yeah.
going to overcompensate. You're going to take too much stuff. You're going to get it wrong. So I was like, you know what? I'm just going to throw myself into this, make the mistakes now. If I ever stupidly do this again, I will have learned. Um, I think I was hoping to be a bit more prepared for some naps, but that did not happen either.
I think one of the things I was like looking back on it that I kind of wish I'd done a bit more was treat myself a bit more. Like instead of like just having snacks that were like kind of like this is for sustenance. It's like bought myself a couple of bags of sweets or something. Do you know what I mean? Like just get that
Yeah.
kind of like I don't know, like little cheeky sugar rush, as well as kind of like chomping an apple a film and like munching some blueberries or whatever. Do you know what I mean? Like instead of like,
Yeah, yeah, that's I think exactly the same boat. Like I got like, a bag of 4 Granny Smith apples.
yeah,
I think just the acidity of that just did me no favors whatsoever. I regret having that popcorn at the start of the night. That just turned to mush in my stomach. That was a mistake. I think after it might have been after Face Off or maybe even Con Air, I got myself a bag of minstrels from upstairs. Hashtag not an ad. Other sweets and confectionaries are available. Um, and that was like a nice little pick me up, I think. That sort of got me alert again. I think I would take a bit more of a range of stuff though next time. Some fruits, like a little treat here and there as well, little rewards, like a good for being a good boy.
So obviously, as your first all nighter, what were your expectations? Like, how did you kind of like feel it was gonna go? Did you plan any naps in? Were you kind of like wary that a nap could come upon you at any moment, or were you just like, I'm gonna see how the night goes?
There was a lot of that, and I was very conscious that like by the time the event actually started, I've been up for like 14 hours by the time the event actually started. Um, so I think there was almost a pressure to stay awake for the first 3 films, which were The Rock, Con Air, and Face Off. 'Cause I was like, these are arguably, as you call them, the testosterone trilogy. These are 3 of the biggest Cage films. And in my head, I was like, this is kind of disrespectful to sleep through these cornerstones of sort of the Cage empire. So I was kind of thinking like, we'll see what the mystery film is. Maybe I can like get book in a nap through there, which turned out to be Drive Angry, which was like, yeah, okay, I'm not ecstatic about it. I'm not miserable about it. Maybe I can get a nap in here. But as I quickly discovered, sort of the space between seats as well, like the row in front and where like the armrests were, that in addition to the fact that I'm a 6'4" man, I'm a long boy. It is very, very hard to get comfortable with that limited space. Um, so like try as I might, I tried to like force myself into positions, try and get myself as comfy as possible. I could not nap for love nor money. You couldn't have paid me enough to nap. I was for some part of it, I was almost napping, well, considering just taking a nap on like the aisle by the seats. I was like, fuck this, I'm out. But I was like, I can't do that. I'll just be asked to go back to my seat by the staff or something. I was like, I'm not gonna inconvenience someone who's like pulled the cage night shift for this. And then I was like, okay, well maybe I can get some nap time back on the megabus back. And turns out I cannot nap on coaches either. Um, so by the time I got back, it was like, said it was about 4 o'clock in the afternoon. I'd been awake for about 36, 37 hours at that point. I think I had a little nap from like maybe like maybe 3 or 4, whenever it was I got back home. Let's say like 4 till 8 or something, or 5 till 8, and like about 3 hours. Then had some food, which I just couldn't get through. Then ended up napping for another like 15, 16 hours. and then felt suspiciously okay the following morning. Tuesday, I felt fine. Then Wednesday, which was yesterday at the point of recording, it was just like I felt like a pre-illness. And then today, I've woke up with this husky voice and feeling like each passing hour, I'm just going to degrade into something demonstrably worse than before. So I think it's part of it's like you've got that adrenaline kind of keeping you alive, and it's like my partner had like whatever they call it, like the mega flu, mega cold that's going around. That's not quite COVID.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So the way our relationship works is that she gets ill, and then I get the ill, but worse. So there's a part of it there as well. So I think either way, even if I hadn't have come to the marathon, this was
Inevitable.
always going to happen. This was inevitable,
This was
basically.
the Thanos of your existence.
This is perfectly balanced as all things should be. Now she's healthy and I'm sick. Um, it was strange as well because it's like this was the first time for me going to like the prestigious Prince Charles Cinema as well. This is my first experience going there, and they've got there was the lady who introduced the evening, and you get that still saying like it's like The Rock at 9:30, and then it was like Face Off at 12:20, and I was looking at that thinking like I don't remember The Rock being this long, or however long it was,
Well, no, because
between films.
obviously there was like Con Air in between. Yeah, The Rock is long. Like,
Of course, yeah.
well,
Then,
like,
like,
so you talked about the mystery film being Drive Angry. What were your kind of predictions, or like, let's talk about like what you thought it could be and what you really, in your heart of hearts, wanted that film to be.
so I'll be honest, like, I didn't even consider Drive Angry Thor. So I guess they have to keep something that's maybe tonally similar in a way, because you've got like action, 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 supernatural. So I was thinking, oh, maybe they might do like a Ghost Rider or something like that. But in my heart of hearts, I think, as I said to you during one of the breaks, I was kind of willing for the Wicker Man. I
Oh,
was like, fucking, like, come on, like Prince Charles, if you've got the stones, if you've got the intestinal fortitude, then you will give us the Wicker Man. And then like when it came on, I remember like just excuse me, some like the opening credits was like Miramax and then Saturn Films. And then someone just shouted, and it might have been Ian or Graham actually. Um, you'd have to ask them, but then someone just shouted like, "This doesn't tell us anything." Um, and then, oh god, I'm dying. And then Drive Angry came on. I think the consensus kind of seemed to be that the people still there and was like, yeah, yeah, could be better, could be worse. Yeah, fine.
yeah, I think
Not
like in my
upset
heart of
about it.
hearts, I wanted it to be dead full just for the like sheer mania that would have caused in the room. Just because, like, I don't. It felt like people were waning when it got to Drive Angry, right? It kind of like came in with more of a whimper than a bang.
Yeah, I'm trying to find the picture I took of the screen. They said the mystery film was at 5 in the morning, so um, we got to drive angry at 5 in the morning, knowing that Mandy would follow at 7 in the morning. And I guess like you just don't know how you're going to be for these films. And I think the most stark thing for me was that I guess I hadn't anticipated what the audience was kind of going to be like as well, because the film started and it's just in the credits, like starring Nicolas Cage. And it's like 160 people going, yes. And then he came on screen and like everyone's like clapping, going like, oh. And then, with the quotable moments, say with like, films like that, all like Con Air is just like, oh, the Barney bag in the box. Everyone's going like, yes. And there's like a lot of laughter throughout the first three films as well. A lot of people enjoying things maybe a bit too much. Says like the cage protector in me. Um, I remember I started coming out of it and just realized, like we've basically cheered for 5 Nicolas Cage films. We've cheered every time Nicolas Cage has been on screen. And I think my exact words, to like you, Ian, and Graham, were, "This might be the whitest thing I've ever been a part of." Um,
Well, I feel like the whole event was very yeah. It's white. Yeah,
yeah,
we're all white. Yeah.
there was quite a hint of caucasity to the evening's events, um, but it was an experience. It's one, I'm happy I did it.
So
I feel like there was the pressure of the podcast to go and do it as well, to show face almost.
exactly. But like, what, like, I'm glad. I'm so glad I did it. Like, just for the experiential nature of the whole thing. And so what were your feelings going into Mandy at 7 o'clock in the morning? Because obviously it's a film you've seen before, right? So like,
Yeah.
knowing that that's what you're going into at 7 o'clock in the morning, what were you kind of like feeling beforehand? Like, like, well, I know me and you took a shit break before Mandy, right? It's kind of like the bowels had broken and it was like, we just got to go, right?
I think that was the physical change for us both. It's like, well, we've hit a point now of no return.
Yeah.
And it was like, well, we've made it this far. Um, and then we were just like in the line for like the cubicles, like a bunch of absolute chumps. Um, just, we couldn't, acknowledge it. We just, can't make eye contact with anyone.
And again, there's people coming in going, oh, are you queuing up for the urinals? And you just have to kind of look someone dead in the eye and be like, no, I'm queuing up for
No.
a stall because I need a shit. Like, that's what you might as well have said to someone, right?
Yeah, it's like, I made a mistake and I had some popcorn about 5 hours ago, and now my stomach is bubbling with diarrhea. Um, Apologies if that was too graphic for you listeners. Well, that's the reality. That was the reality of
Exactly.
the
We
situation.
got to tell the war stories, right? It can't all be like the victory of it. It's got to be the scabs and the scars that made us the men we are today.
Highs and lows, man. Highs and lows. And then you just come out of that and go back into like the pitch darkness and find your seat for like wow, Mandy, and you're like, fuck, like last. We've got to go the distance here. We can go the distance. I can rock you this shit. And then it's almost like just a quiet acceptance of Mandy. Um, I think I might have got like minutes of sleep here than there, because I think I was kind of just trying to force myself, like, this is the last opportunity to try and get some kind of shut eye in. And it was just a psychedelic acceptance of like things out of your control. Like,
Well,
this is happening. This is the
yeah,
world I'm in now.
I
And here we are.
I said it to Graham that first 45 minutes to an hour of Mandy almost will you at that time of the morning to fall asleep, because it is that kind of like hazy, psychedelic, drugged out feeling that the film has, that it's like, if you are tired, this is going to kind of like lull you into this kind of like, I don't know, almost like comforting feeling that like if you're prone to like napping at that time, you're going to probably drift off before the kind of like the mania of all of it hits, right?
Yeah, it's. I think the best way to sort of describe it is as Mandy's coming into an end, and obviously it's that quite striking visual of like Nicolas Cage driving that car, covered in blood, just like gurning at the camera with that wild-eyed face. I was like, that's how I feel
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
right now.
yeah, yeah,
It's
I wanted to turn to you with that look on my face, like, just to be like, that, like, this is like, and I was hoping for, like, a kind of, like, kismet scenario where we both kind of just turned to each other like we probably did without realizing it, probably just turned to each other like, like, if there's an audio representation of that face that Nicolas Cage does at the end of that film, because it was like it's a it's a it's a weird enough film, and I'm not sure, was that your first time watching it on the big screen, or had you had the opportunity before?
No, first time on the big screen for me. I think there's obviously like a spate of Cage films at the moment, which are quite limited releases, and I think Mandy was one of them. I don't recall it coming out anywhere near to me. So watching it at home on Blu-ray was my first experience of it. But then that with all the films, seeing them in like glorious 35 millimeter, um, I think it just it really accentuates a film and elevates it. For the cinema purist in you, so kind of demands your attention in a way. So it was just trippy. Like I felt at that point that I was on hallucinogenics.
Yeah.
It was just like this like slack jawed, wide eyed, just like uh.
Th that is, like, the reason I'm glad I went to it, because, like, just having that experience of Mandy at that time of the morning, it's like I think it's the woman who gives Mandy, like, that kind of, like, oh, like, that that heroic dose of LSD says, like, "We call this the cherry on the top," and that's what Mandy felt like to that night. It was the cherry on the top of just kind of like, we as a cinema, the Prince Charles, have, like, drove you through this kind of nirvana of Nicolas Cage. Now here is the cherry on top of it all, and this we're gonna take you on a psychedelic fucking trip that's gonna blow your mind. And I felt it. I was like, kind of like, my mind was melting.
Yeah, yeah. It's like I'm not that I've done like hard class A drugs before, but I felt like I had on that night.
Mhm.
In some ways, it feels like it's still in my system.
Yeah.
I think if at at point like the fucking Hellraiser bondage leather clad bike riding demons had just come through the cinema down the aisles and just carried me away, I'd be like, yeah, cool man, why not?
Yeah.
Why not at this point?
If
A
Fuck
fitting
Pig
end.
had carried you away, you'd have been like, "That's all fine by me, baby. I'll have
Yeah,
it."
blow your fucking magic green conch and send me to hell, bro. Bro, like, well, I've got nothing else on. This is the way I want to go out right now.
Amazing.
Whiz me past the Ritz and fucking chuck me through a window like the working class scum I am.
So obviously we talked about, like, so was the experience enjoyable for you, Daryl? I must know that, if anything
It
was.
was, it was. I think it was. I think it took me like a few minutes to sort of acclimatise to what the atmosphere was and what it was I was actually going through. But overall, I'm glad I did it. I enjoyed it. I'm in no rush to ever do it again. would
I
be
I
my
I
honest assessment.
I laugh, but I feel the same. If like it feels like for me as somebody who like now works in a school, I was like, if this happened in a half term, I could have like prepped myself, like kind of like acclimatize myself to like the sleeping pattern and kind of got it so like it was just a walk in the park. Do you know what I mean? Like if you have the time
Yeah,
off before and
yeah,
after to just kind of like breeze through it, like, "Oh, yeah, I'm doing a couple of night shifts," and then just, like, flip your clock around for a bit. It would have been like
yeah.
an absolute cakewalk. So let's talk about some things you didn't enjoy. And me and Graham mentioned certain somebody who I know very much got on your wick, and we're talking about the lady in the back row, baby.
Oh, fucking that bro arc hunt. Oh, just it's. I mean, how do I even like? So basically, there was someone who's never seen a film before in their life. And again, I apologize if this sounds snobbish or like a cinematically elitist or whatever. But this was someone who didn't realize that the people on the screen are pre-recorded and this is not live theatre and that they can't hear you and talk throughout every single film. Like, was drinking the entire night. You know what? That's fine. That's your right to do so. Enjoy the night as you see fit. But was talking throughout every film just loudly. And I don't think people wanted to like say anything in case they didn't get that. Also, I am also Spartacus reaction. But she was getting shushed and shushed and shushed and would not shut up. And I think, as you said, she just got just like in face off. She's like, "Why are they taking each other's faces off?" I was like, "Have you not been watching the film?" Like, it's like we all know it's a fucking absurd premise, but like, there's a reason established as to why they are doing this. How do you not get this? Um, but and just annoying, just would not shut up. The greatest joy, though, sort of skipping through the 12 hours, is when we all came out at the end. You know, came out the other side like Andy
Piled out like
Dufresne,
ants.
like ants, and then she came out looking like absolute garbage, like she's been awake for 400 hours, hair and makeup all over the place, stumbling. And I was like, that's what you fucking deserve. And I hope you've had like a hangover for like a week. At the point, I was so just like weird and just like felt all over the place. I was kind of like, I wanted to, and this is going to sound unnecessarily aggressive, and like I don't feel that way now. But you have to understand, at the time I'd been awake for about 27 hours or so at that point. If she'd died, I would have laughed. If she just dropped dead and died, I'd be like, fucking yes. I don't feel that way now. I've slept. I've had time to reconsider that emotion. It is not me. It is not who I am. You just have to understand the circumstances surrounding it. I've been awake for a long time. A Nicolas Cage marathon, believe it or not, is a lot to go through. I'd been on 5.5 hours of Megabus getting there, an hour more than I had to because of like traffic. There's congestion on the London tubes. I had another 4.5 hours to go of Megabuses going back. My day had not finished. I was in no mood for her bullshit. So if she died at the time, I would have probably just high-fived everyone around her. That was outside the Prince Charles Cinema. Again, I do not condone people randomly, spontaneously dying. But at the time, it would have been a blessing. And that's all I'll say without my lawyers present at this time.
Well, there was a moment, I think it was like near the start of Mandy, where the kind of group in the back row turned to each other and said, "We've just run out of booze." Like, 'cause I kept hearing like
Incredible.
bottles clink around them as well. So I was
Yes.
like, I didn't want to be like a real like, I don't know, like Poindexter and be like, "You've clearly brought in outside alcohol." Do you know what I mean? Like that they had, because nobody could have been so like mangled and mashed as they all were when it got to the
Yeah.
end without like kind
Yeah.
of just having a supply of alcohol throughout it. Like who knows what it was. Like, but they were absolutely mashed out of their like nuts by the end of it.
Yeah. Yeah. Fucking morons and a disgrace to the good name of Nicolas Cage. How dare they besmirch the Golden Hog?
Well, I thought what was great about it is the fact that like there was that level of like um crowd participation and people like getting involved and stuff like that, because like I think once you acclimatize to it and kind of like get used to it, it was kind of like, oh, I'm with my people. And it was
Yeah.
like, I think it was unfortunate for us being sat where we were that we kind of had this like adverse effect to that of people like taking it that one step too far. It's like that thing of like just getting involved in a pantomime when it's not like the "He's behind you" like line. Do you know what I mean? Somebody just like chipping in at, I don't know, when Dick Whittington's giving a speech or something. It's like, no, it's not the time for it. There's crowd participation and this isn't it. And it's like when everybody was kind of beating the same drum, it was really fun and it like made the experience so much more enjoyable and kind of like being like, I'm home.
Yeah, I think it kind of almost elicits a reaction you wouldn't get from watching it at home because there's some like funny points to the film. Is that I guess you kind of don't really laugh at when you're watching it by yourself, but when you've got the collective of that crowd, and it just becomes a lot more enjoyable and funnier. Not massively when you're fighting the Rotar enemy from within back there, like the infiltrators and whatever. But it brings it's just another element to it with the sort of crowd participation.
I had like one of my biggest laughs of the night was just like seeing another patron's like reaction to the whole like dragging the hand down the face from Face Off. And there was a
Yeah,
guy absolutely losing his mind a few rows in front of us. And he like him laughing just made me laugh even more. And I was like, this is great. This isn't an experience I would have been able to get at home. And there's like, yeah, throughout like the kind of especially the first three, and it kind of like there was a bit of a sea change when it got to Drive Angry. There's a lot of people who kind of dipped out around that point, and then there was a real like reverence I found for Mandy. It almost felt like people didn't even cheer when Nicolas Cage came on screen because it was like that thing of like people knew what was coming for them. Do you know what I mean? They kind of knew like this isn't a film to like. Do you know what I mean? This isn't the Rocky Horror Picture Show. This isn't The Room. This isn't a pantomime. This is some serious
yeah,
shit.
yeah. It's a weird film to cheer for, man. Obviously by the end credits there was applause. I think that was almost in part of applauding ourselves, saying like, "That's it. That's film five. Like we're done. Like we're out. We've made it, everyone." Um, I don't know if I'll ever applaud for a film again. It's a foreign experience to me, as an emotionally closed off man. Um, but it was, enjoyable in the room. Um, I'm trying to think the next film I see will probably end up being No Time to Die, just because it's the only thing on. But I'm
Yeah,
not going to applaud it because
yeah,
I've got some
yeah.
stones. I've got standards. Only Cage gets my applause.
I'm not going to get started on the fact that my local cinema has 40 showings a day of No Time to Die.
Yeah, same, same, same.
Yep, cinema is back, baby. We are living in the dark times once again. So,
Oh yes.
before we wrap this up, I just want to ask you, what would be your advice to anyone if they were embarking upon either a Nick Cage all night marathon or any all night marathon for that fact?
Um, I think, have your range of snacks, get your fruits, get a few sugary little sweets in there to range it up. I think water is key, to keep yourself hydrated and alert. Energy drinks, you're gonna crash. Take something comfortable. I think that was, a mistake I made. I should have took something comfortable. There was the two women who were sat in front of us, and they had like the travel pillow and they had the blanket. They had the aisle seats they could sort of stretch out as well, so they had it all planned out to a T. From personal experience, if you're traveling from afar, take a mode of transport as close to the time that the film starts as possible. So you're not up for any longer than you need to be. You'll need your energy and your strength. Um, and I think don't be afraid to fucking rat out stupid, chatty cunts at the back of the cinema. I was a coward and regret it that I didn't knock them out. Um, Don't be afraid to throw hands. Don't be afraid to throw hands is my ultimate advice. If you're going to go for a marathon, knock cunts out, knock people out, chin people, bring back the happy slap. That's what I say.
Jesus. Well, on that note, Daryl,
On that bombshell.
yeah, yeah. Where can people keep up to date with everything you're doing with Cage Rage or yourself personally, or yeah, sell your wares to us, Daryl?
If you like my level of aggression and um, and other sorts of things, you can find me on Twitter at cage_podcast. That's usually where I'm most active. Also on Instagram at Cage Rage Pod. You can find between the two my various shit posts on there. Also on all the usual streaming services. You can find the link tree on the socials, your Googles, your Amazons, your Apples, your Podchasers, and the like. I'm just about to wrap up 2014 at the point of recording this with Petros. So it's been a lovely year to go through. So I've got some catching up to do, um, for before I get to Petros's level. But if you listen to my theme and think it sounds a little bit familiar, Petros bloody made that. Is bloody really good in it. And then in the far-flung future, as Petros is moving on to the Coppola connections, I will be, hopefully one day, whenever that will be, moving on to the works of Willem Dafoe with Getting Dafoe You. Another name, I think, supplied by Petros. I owe him all of my success, basically. So, yeah, all of that stuff to come.
Amazing. Well, yeah, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on the podcast, Darryl. And it was a pleasure meeting you and sharing this weird and wonderful experience with you as well.
A bond, an unbreakable bond of brothers.
Yeah.
That will be tested by time.
I said it to Graham, and I say it to you as well. That it feels like we're kind of like intrinsically linked by the soul. We're melded together for forever, whether we like it or not.
We are cosmic bros forevermore.
We are radioactive, baby. The third person talking to me all about the Prince Charles Nicolas Cage all-nighter is the other half of the podcast that nobody asked for. Ian Harries, how are you, sir?
I'm good. It's slightly weird being away from Graham. I'm not used to talking about films without him being here.
Well,
but I think I'll get used to it.
I'm glad I could be the other man in this situation, the late night lover, the booty call, as it were.
Everyone needs a Nicolas Cage podcast booty call on speed dial.
Yeah,
it's
and you've got
there's
two.
Nowhere else I'd rather be.
You've got two, right? I'm sure you could booty call
yeah.
Darryl any time, and he would pick up the phone as well. Amazing. Well, a question I love to ask anyone who comes on this podcast, no matter for what it is for, and it feels very redundant. I've said this. I've obviously said this to all three people I've spoke to. Are you a Nicolas Cage fan, Ian?
Just a little bit. Yeah, just a little bit. So I think the perfect summary of how much I love Nicolas Cage is the last 5 or 6 birthdays I've gone out of my way to watch a Nicolas Cage film. I have had people ask if I'm joking when I talk about how much I like him. And it's become, I think people think I'm doing a bit when I say I think he's one of the most underrated actors working, but I legitimately feel it. This year's birthday film was, because we had the Nicolas Cage marathon planned, I didn't want to pick something which would possibly be the mystery film.
Okay.
So I watched Jiu-Jitsu.
Oh, yeah. So Graham mentioned this, that he watched part of it and like you had rewound it. So how was Jiu-Jitsu for you, Ian?
It was it is a proper good bad movie. It's the only way to describe it. Nicolas Cage is full Nicolas Cage in it, and I would recommend it, but I wouldn't watch it it's not one to watch by yourself. It's one to watch with a group of friends with a beer.
Yeah, I had the unfortunate pleasure of watching it twice because I was fortunate enough to get a press screener of like a press link for the film before it came out, and then and then I recorded like a spoiler-free special on the release, and then when it came round to covering it like properly on the podcast, I had to then watch it again, and I own it on Blu-ray because I have what can only be described as a severe mental illness where I have to own every single Nicolas Cage film on physical media, just so like one day I can like, I don't know, like the Pringles man was buried in a Pringles tube. Apparently, I like to think it is so.
Yeah.
I'm just gonna be
you just want all of your all of your Blu-rays buried with you.
Just all my Nick Cage ones, yeah, just kind of pushed out to sea, and then a big fiery arrow shot at me, and just all this plastic and person just burning up and really ruining the atmosphere.
What is that? I mean, if you want to go full Nicolas Cage, obviously he's. My favourite thing with Nicolas Cage is everything sounds like we're lying.
Mm.
But obviously, Nicolas Cage has got his pyramid he's going to be buried in New Orleans.
Yes.
So maybe that's the way to go. You just make a pyramid out of all of these Nicolas Cage Blu-rays.
That's perfect.
And we just
what I'd like to do,
lay you to rest in there.
use the cases and then just have all the discs so the shiny side is facing out, so it's even more of a monstrosity.
Yeah.
And it's just like this kind of, anyone who comes to visit me on a sunny day will just be blinded by the ghost of Nicolas Cage as well. Yeah, that's
Yeah, it works. And then to go full Nicolas Cage, we'll get a dinosaur skull in there. We'll have something to do with a castle. It'll be great.
amazing. You mentioned that pyramid. I had the absolute pleasure of speaking to Brian Taylor, one of the directors of Ghost Rider, Spirit of Vengeance, and Mum and Dad.
Oh, cool.
And he told me this great story of him and his co-director. His name escapes me. Mark Neville-Dean. They went for beignets with Nicolas Cage in New Orleans to kind of talk about the film. And then out of nowhere, Cage just turns around to him and went, "Hey guys, do you want to see my tomb?" And then they hopped the fence into the cemetery to see Nicolas Cage's like pyramid. And I like that sums the guy up to me.
But like, where does your life go after that's happened to you?
Exactly.
Like, you've gone out for beignets with Nicolas Cage, who's then convinced you to hop a fence into a cemetery to see his pyramid. It's like, well, that's it. I've peaked.
I think I read recently as well that it's like, it's somewhere he takes like his like dates like quite early on to see it. It's like kind of like if you've got a seat like if you can't take me at my tomb, you don't deserve me at all kind of like affair. It's a very like, imagine that, like, I don't know, I've been on some weird dates, but that would be the weirdest, right?
Well, it's because if you're in New Orleans as well, he can take you past that murder house he used to own.
Yeah, the
Like,
Lalaurie house.
The most haunted house in America, or one of the most haunted houses. So go check that out and then head down to the pyramid.
He's a very, but yeah, I love how bizarre he is. I remember someone reached out to me on Twitter and said, I think this is possibly, I need to re-find it. It's possibly one of my favorite photos. Is Nicolas Cage in a car phone warehouse getting a contract on a phone because obviously he'd bought a castle near Bath, and you got like Nicolas Cage dressed like a Dickensian character in a pair of Uggs, I believe, as well, with just like this really like ruddy, bloody bloke, like just stood there in his like car phone warehouse shirt and a pair of Reebok Classics, like, yeah, here's me and Nick. It's me and Nick, like, and I just want to know what deal he got. Do you know what I mean? Did he get like 24-month contract? Was it a pay as you go? Like, what phone did he go for? Is he an iPhone man? Is he a Samsung guy? Who knows?
Well, it depends. It depends which side of the tax divide he was. If it was before all of that hit, he's going to get the most expensive, weird phone he possibly could. And if it was after that, it is probably a pay as you go with free calls at the weekend, and then that's it. That's all the accountant would allow.
That is true. I'm like, I'd love to know where, because Nick Cage sounds like he's back to his kind of old ways, isn't he? You kind of hear about him in interviews that he's got a crow, and he's got like all this weird stuff going on again. So it feels like he's kind of, the cash has risen back up.
Well, you had one of my most watched Nicolas Cage things recently is his hauntingly beautiful rendition of Purple Rain.
Oh wow, I have not seen this.
So he was very drunk at a karaoke bar, and it is him just like shouting the lyrics to Purple Rain down this microphone, and it is everything you could expect from Nicolas Cage singing Purple Rain at karaoke.
That's beautiful. The thing I've like avoided kind of, and well, no, I watched it and it made me feel very sad, and like I've just made a decision there and then that I won't like share it on Twitter, was that video of him getting kicked out of a bar recently, or like a restaurant.
Yeah, I was I was going to say that because apparently, like, a relative died recently or something like that, and it is that feels a bit like it's not him being weird. It is actually just him being very sad, and you don't feel like you can laugh at that. That's we've all had a shitty time when stuff like that happens.
And the fact the video is shared by like the Sun US, and it's like, the most irreprehensible like newspaper of all time sharing this absolute fucking bullshit. It's like, no, thank you. So yeah, you're a Nicolas Cage fan. That's a given, right?
Oh yeah.
So
yeah, that's the takeaway from that.
yeah, exactly. You know the weirdness. You've watched him sing Purple Rain. You've almost outdone me. So what would have been the first Nicolas Cage film you would have seen? Can you remember?
Oh, I think so. I think it would have been something like Face Off. So not when it came out. We would be talking kind of like early noughties. But I think it would be something like that. Just because it's the kind of film my dad would have showed me. So it is growing up, we had a local like video rental store, which I think as it stopped making money, kind of the coffee part of it got bigger and bigger, and now I think it is just a coffee place. But he would always go there. So I watched. I remember I was sick off school one day when I was like 9 or 10, and he came back with Predator on VHS. So it would definitely been a dad bought it back from Video World film, because I mean it's Face Off. It's
definitely
it's a weird action film. Yeah,
it's one of those films that like I think everyone like of a certain age saw it suspiciously young. I kind of had I had that with Commando. I remember like, and I'm only 30. I don't know why Commando is my go-to film for this, but I remember like I'm not sure like I'm yet to kind of speak to somebody who has this like shared memory of like having a video play like VHS player like downstairs that could show in the bedrooms upstairs. I'm not sure how it worked, like but yeah, it was like a separate channel, so people could watch the TV downstairs, but you could kind of like
Yes, yeah, I do remember something like that. A friend of mine had it, but it was like their Sky could transmit to the other rooms or something like that.
Yeah.
But you had to have it on the TV downstairs.
Oh no, this was like you didn't have to have it on the TV. It's like the VHS could just like beam into the bedroom.
Oh wow!
And I remember like watching Commando when I was like 8 or 9 years old, or something silly like that, like disgustingly young. And my mum like turned over to the VHS channel and then called up to me, and I like ran down in my pajamas. So I was like, "Yes, mum." So what do you want? Like, I think she's turned over at the bit when Arnold Schwarzenegger snaps Bill Duke's neck on the plane, and my response was, "It's fine, mum. I watched it round my friend's house before," and she just went, "Oh, okay then. Oh, all right. Yeah, you're the youngest of 3. We've given up now. Like it doesn't matter. Like if you said you've seen it, it's fine." Yeah. So
yeah, no, I definitely watched Commando far too soon as well. Yeah. But yeah, Nicolas Cage was Face Off. Weirdly, I then didn't watch Con Air and The Rock until quite a bit later. But Face Off was definitely the introduction, and then I kind of went out of my way to start seeking films out from him, and then the habit became a problem after university.
What would you say was like the first film you saw that really like, if it wasn't Face Off, was there a film that really like stood out to you of like, I've really, really got to see more of this guy?
So it's kind of really like 2 films, I think, because you have like Nicolas Cage, the legitimately very good actor. And then you have Nicolas Cage, the Nicolas Cage.
Yes.
So I watched Raising Arizona, where he's phenomenal in it.
Mhm.
I don't think it gets, because obviously leaving Las Vegas is everyone's first port of call when you're talking about how legitimately good he is as an actor. But Raising Arizona never seems to be talked about. It's like the other Coen Brothers movie. So I saw that, and then quite quickly after that, I think I saw like Gone in 60 Seconds.
Okay.
And it was like, these are the same person. This hasn't, I don't understand how this could be the same guy. And then from there, I think I just started. So you had like 8mm, Matchstick Men, which has one of my favorite Cage outbursts in, but not many people have really seen it. And just started plowing through as many of them as I could. I was like, you know what? This is my jam.
I like, to your point of obviously the fact that like there's that disparity between what he can give you. I love the fact that you can get that within a year. Do you know what I mean? You can like, a film can come out in the same year and you're just like, this is the same guy.
Well,
This year is the prime
Yeah.
the prime example. What, the beginning of the year we got Willy's Wonderland, and then we got Pig, and it's like
and you went for the other side of the bookend there. I was going to say, so in 1 week, went to the Prince Charles Cinema to watch Pig. So I think I saw it on like the Wednesday. Then on the Friday, I went to see Prisoners of the Ghostland at Fright Fest.
Yeah.
So you have Nicolas Cage in like Oscar, but like legitimately Oscar buzz role about like grief and its impact on someone. And then you have a film where he has a bomb wired to his testicles. Sorry, no, a bomb individually wired to each testicle.
Yeah.
I was like, I'm okay with this.
It's just fascinating that we get that from like Nicolas Cage, that he is this kind of, I always, he very much like, it's a roulette roll, or like, it's just a roll of the dice every movie, and that, I think that's what makes him wholly interesting as an actor, and like, I think gets people like us coming back, and even, I don't know, The Initiated like come back for that and kind of take the rough with the smooth. But then I think, I don't know, I guess even the uninitiated, like, they're kind of, I don't know, they probably have that thing of like, he's just shit. And like, we kind of saw it when Pig came out, like, has Nicolas Cage always been great, or is it just now? And it's like, fuck off.
It's the amount of people. So I let it be known that I was going to see Pig, and I had a lot of people say, all right, let me know what it is. And I think the message I sent out to a few friends was like, look, it's legitimately incredible. Like I don't think it will win, but I could see it get like Oscar nominations. I think it's a beautiful portrayal. And everyone's response was, is it though? Or are you just saying this because it's Nicolas Cage? It's like, no. Like, legitimately, it's very, very good. But what's kind of good now is, so like you said, you kind of have the rough with the smooth. And previously, the rough was generally because he couldn't turn roles down because he had to make money. The rough films now seem to be kind of because he seems to be a bit in on the joke.
Yes.
That he's Nicolas Cage, and he seems to be making decisions to star in films that could only be, like, Primal was a piece of shit, but it could only be a Nicolas Cage film. It's a big game hunter on a boat. There's no other actor who could make that film be made.
I like, the thing is, like, I'm not sure if it's because I've like watched every Nicolas Cage film and I'm always like kind of judging the next one against the last one and stuff like that, and kind of got to the point where I'm a lot more forgiving to certain films. Primal, I absolutely loved. I was like, this is great. Like, I was like, it almost feels like a weird companion piece to Con Air in a way. It's this kind of like ragtag guy he's quite quippy in Primal as well. And I just remember like having a lot of fun with that movie.
But that's the thing, they had a lot of fun with it.
Yes.
And there is a world where if, like, mid-2010s, he took all the films quite seriously. So I think because he lent into it, you can enjoy it because he's clearly enjoying it. But yeah, it's just great, isn't it?
What I like the fact that now he seems like he's on a kind of level plane where he can just take risks, and it's not just I'm doing this because I need the money. It's like, you know what, I'm going to take a risk on a first time director or like somebody who hasn't directed in a while or something, and it could go either way.
Yeah.
But I'm still going to deliver. Like I know, like Willy's Wonderland, there's like mixed reception to that film, but he still took a gamble and he delivered something that is like it's it, it's going to go
It's
down
so
in
much fun.
yeah, it's going to go down in history as well because it's like he chose to play that role and he was very adamant. Like that, I think there was there was a line written into the script, and Cage said,
Yeah.
"My one caveat is, I don't say that line. Like, I play the whole thing silent." And it's like, what a baller move. Do you know what I mean? Like, whether you like or hate that film.
Yeah. But like he's now doing so. Obviously, Unbearable Weight of Massive Talent is coming out, and then he's doing like back-to-back westerns.
Oh, I can't wait. I can't wait.
Yeah, it's like I can't think of many actors who do jump around that much, and it's
And I think
yeah.
in between that, he's got a film called The Retirement Plan that has this like really crazy like cast to it, and God knows what it's going to be. I think like Ernie Hudson's in it. I want to say like Lawrence Fishburne's in it, and like it's about like a kind of like like from the photos on set and that he just looks like a kind of like aging beach bum who's kind of pulled back into a life of crime or kind of like I don't an ex-cop who has to save someone. And after like I think after Pig especially, like when a synopsis comes out for a film, it's like I'm not gonna expect it's gonna be just a John Wick or a like Taken knockoff. It could go anywhere, and that's I love that prospect for
Oh
the
yeah,
future of
yeah.
Cage.
Yeah, it's I legitimately have no idea what the next project he's going to do will be,
Yeah.
and I love that. All I know for sure is I'm going to watch it at the soonest possible opportunity.
Exactly. So yeah, let's talk about before we get to talking about the Nicolas Cage all night marathon. I want to know, Ian, which is your favourite Nicolas Cage film?
It's recency bias is real with that, isn't it? Because Pig is definitely up there, I think, in terms of actual quality of film he's done. So like my favorite film Nicolas Cage has starred in is probably Pig. My favorite Nicolas Cage film, if we're looking at like the genre of Nicolas Cage, it is difficult. Adaptation is definitely a favorite. I mean, two Nicolas Cages for the price of one. That's always a plus. It's yeah. I don't want to. I don't know if it's because it's the first one we mentioned, but I am a big fan of just how crazy Face Off is.
Yeah.
But it's difficult. I think it's the my answer would be different depending when you ask me.
I think it is that thing, and there is like such a spectrum of like which Cage are you asking for, and it's that thing of like, are you asking for a film that is a like you said a Nicolas Cage film, a film
Yeah,
starring Nicolas Cage, or a film that Nicolas Cage is in? Do you know what I mean? Like some people have answered that question.
Yeah.
Going, my favorite one of the films he's in is Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. Or something, do you know what I mean? Because they're like, I love that film.
yeah,
Nicolas Cage happens to be in it.
yeah. Or one of my favorites, if we're just kind of going for less obvious, I love Lord of War.
Oh,
Like, not a lot of people seem to talk about it. Like, it has one of my favorite. At some point, we're going to do like a top 3 list of like opening credit scenes, and Lord of War is up there for me. Like, it follows the path of a bullet from it being manufactured to thrown into the hands of like a child soldier kind of thing, and it's so good. And it's The one distraction is he's supposed to be playing a Ukrainian guy, which maybe not quite so convincing, but it's such a good film, and it has like an air of like RoboCop satire to it as well. Like they kind of intersperse. I think it opens with a shopping channel style thing of them selling AK-47s. But yeah, a lot of time for that film.
Every time like I kind of think about that film, I always think about the prospect of Nicolas Cage and Ethan Hawke like starring in something together again. And like I know like loads of people call out for the Cage Travolta team up again, and it's like I would love to see a film where we get like Cage and Ethan Hawke on screen like for a decent amount of time, because that one they're kind of playing like that cat and mouse game, and like it's I don't know, like those two playing like in Hollywood, I reckon they could get away with playing brothers, right? Do you know what I mean? Like,
oh yeah, he's played brothers with weirder people. I mean, Jared Leto is his brother in Lord of War.
Exactly.
Like, it's more convincing. But what's good with Ethan Hawke is both Ethan Hawke and Nicolas Cage seem to have realised that they're quite good at horror.
Yes.
So I could see them both doing a horror movie together, and it being very, very weird, but very good.
Or even like a Paul Schrader film together, because they've both kind of like seem to be in like simpatico with Paul Schrader. So like how we got Willem Dafoe and Nicolas Cage doing Dog Eat Dog, and it's that kind of like those two teaming up since way back when with Wild at Heart. It's like if Paul Schrader could pull those two together for like a new fucking gonzo film, or even something like contemplative, like, do you know what I mean? Like how Paul Schrader released First Reform the other year, that was like a very like serious film. Those two in like a serious, like a really serious film together, I think would be like chef's kiss.
Well, I guess Ethan Hawke is quite similar to Nicolas Cage in that he does. I mean, even just looking at recent films he did, like you said, he got First Reformed, Sinister. He was in he was in the first Purge.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, like he's done like made some very interesting choices for someone who I think was always positioned as being like the next big thing.
Well, I think it's that thing as well that like I think the edge that Ethan Hawke has over Nicolas Cage is just that constant collaboration he has with Richard Linklater, in the fact that like he can kind of go off and do popcorn fare, but then he can go back and do another like before film. Do you know what I mean? Like the kind of
or shoot another film for like 12 years.
Exactly. Yeah. So he can kind of go like, oh, I'm in these serious films, but then he can go off and do Sinister, and people go like, but even that, like that's kind of recently had a, I don't know, like recontextualized as, but I think there's like a study that said it is like scientifically the most scary film, and then you get all these think pieces of going like, Sinister is an absolute gem. Like we all love it. We all loved it at the time, and but those two together, I think, would be perfect. I'm gonna take Lord of War as your favorite film. I know it's not, but
I'll take it. Yeah.
So yeah, let's talk about the fateful evening that we met at the Prince Charles Cinema for the Nicolas Cage all-nighter, and I want to know, how did you prepare for the night, and had you ever been to one of their all-nighters before?
So I hadn't been to one of the all-nighters before. Preparation, I came straight from playing a game of rugby.
Amazing.
So that was definitely about 2-3 in the morning. My back started going. It was not. I wouldn't recommend that being the prep, but it was. We had a backpack full of energy drink. The Prince Charles Cinema recommends sticking with fruit and water.
Yep.
But I had to go for the energy drink. Weird, obvious thing to say for prep. I didn't watch any of the films in the build-up to the marathon. But so I hadn't seen. I don't think I'd seen any of them for for over a year before going into it. I think a lot of the marathons that have piqued my interest with the Prince Charles, it's like they do the Arnie one quite regularly, but there's always been a film I've seen quite recently, and it's like I can't. Don't get me wrong. Like to talk about a film we mentioned before, like I love Commando, but if I've watched it in the last 2 months, I can't watch it at 2 a.m.
Yeah.
It's just not going to work.
I think there is that thing of like the shared experience thing, and I know that's like very like that's a hot button topic at the moment, especially with people going like a pandemic is still raging, and I totally understand that. And then like you get the whole thing of like directors going, "You must see my film in the cinema, otherwise you won't enjoy it." But like, especially experiencing that Nicolas Cage all-nighter, and yeah, I hadn't seen any of the films on the big screen before, and I hadn't like
Yes,
I hadn't experienced them. I don't know, like it was a different experience for me experiencing them with people who are all a part of the Church of Cage, as it were.
yeah, same. So I watched Mandy in the cinema, so I actually watched that at the Prince Charles. But the others, given how many times I have seen The Rock, Con Air, and Face Off, I'd only ever seen it either just by myself or with a couple of friends at home. Like watching it in a cinema, especially after 18 months without crowds really being a thing, it made you appreciate parts of the film you may not have appreciated before. So, or people laughing at times where you hadn't laughed before. It's like, actually, no, you're right. That is weirdly funny. The one that sprung to mind was I forgot just how funny the sex scene in The Rock is when they're on the top of the block of flats. And it's just before he gets a call telling him to come to San Francisco, and the cinema was just in hysterics. And it's like, yeah, no, you're right, guys. This is hilariously weird.
I had like a massive revelation on The Rock in the thing of like of those three like kind of big 90s Nicolas Cage like I don't know action adjacent movies. I was like, this is my least favorite, and kind of like dismissed it, and then like watching it with that crowd, I was like, and I guess like being a bit older and kind of being very much more aware of the Jerry Bruckheimer, Don Simpson like stable of films, I was like, this is so much fun. Like it is borderline a comedy, and
yeah,
I think
it's. Oh no, carry on.
I think it's the first time we get a recurring theme that runs throughout Nicolas Cage films is him stealing a like two-wheeled like mode of transport, which has like now become, I think it's more than a coincidence. It's happened in 4 films.
Yeah.
So like, which is making me think like, has Cage got this written in a contract somewhere? If possible, can I steal a motorbike or a bike?
Yeah, it's like, or shout a random word. That's what I need from this film.
Exactly. Yeah,
I need
a
bike, a bicycle, or a random word I can shout. It's the Rock for me. Again, quite similar to you. It was always like the odd one out, but I think I'm not saying it's my favorite, but I think it might be the best film out of the 3.
Okay.
Because it's very well done.
Yeah.
Like there's not really any wasted time in it. I can't think of any way you could shorten it. There's nothing you need to really make it any longer. You've got Sean Connery seems to be in on the joke that it's a bit stupid as well.
Yeah.
And Ed Harris, I've always got time for Ed Harris.
Yeah, and it's one of those interesting films that it's like it's a believable bad guy for one. It's like a guy where like you kind of I get why he's pissed off, and it's like the characters get why he's pissed off, and yeah, very much Sean Connery's in on the joke. Like and it's been none more apparent than when he delivers the famous line "Welcome to the Rock," and then being in that crowd on that fateful Saturday night of just everyone kind of like losing their shit when he says it, and like because now it's just like a gif, but like that's the thing, like those three films, The Rock, Con Air, and Face Off, are kind of just like gift to hell, and it was that thing of like people's reactions when they saw
there was
those gifts in
yeah, there
real
was
life,
such a
right?
cheer after. So, welcome to the Rock. Are you a fan of Elton John? You're the Rocket Man. Him coming off of the plane, the coach in Con Air. So the Nicolas Cage hair gif. Him dressed as the priest in Face Off, which is like one of the Nicolas Cage faces, alongside with Vampire's Kiss. Like, if someone's picturing Nicolas Cage, it's that or the Vampire's Kiss face. But it was so much fun watching it in a crowd. The one confusing moment for me was what I forgot was that Con Air the opening minute of Con Air is so similar to The Rock. I thought they'd accidentally put the same film on again.
Yeah,
because it's sunsets, planes, soldiers, Jerry Bruckheimer, a song that sounds like somebody is trying to hum the Pirates of the Caribbean theme tune, but can't remember how it goes. And it was exactly the same. It was like, this could be, because obviously in The Rock, it's the Ed Harris bit that they're talking about how it's the military and what he's done. And then in Con Air, it's the Nicolas Cage is like a US Ranger, and it's showing the military stuff because of that. And legitimately, I thought it was the same film until he actually gets off the coach or goes to the bar, and it's oh yay, we are on to Con Air.
Yeah. So, what are your opinions on Con Air? Because for me, I think it's like I don't know if it's unintentional, but like for me, it's a comedy. It feels like it's really playing for comedic value.
Yeah, so Con Air it's an interesting one because I struggle to look past the premise a little bit because there is no way Nicolas Cage would have gone to prison. Like it's not. It was someone pulled a knife on him and he hit him. Like, that's self-defense. You're done. Please go enjoy the rest of your life with your pregnant wife. But it is a comedy. I think for the most part it realizes it, but it's so much fun, and it's I think John Cusack is an underrated piece of that film as well. Obviously we would have watched it anyway, but I think his kind of manic I'm not even sure what his job was, and I'm still confused why it was his jurisdiction, but he was very funny in it.
He's great,
but I loved it, and again, hadn't ever watched it in the cinema before.
Yeah, that was one I loved. Like I loved Con Air, and like the fact that like so you've got like Steve Buscemi, who's like at that point would have been known for like comedy from like Airheads and stuff like that. You've got Dave Chappelle, who is obviously a comedian. You've got all these people kind of like dialing it up to 11 and kind of like just having.
Well, I always forget how stacked the cast is.
Yeah.
It's because Danny Trejo, Ving Rhames, John Malkovich. They just kind of keep coming.
Yeah, even down to people like Michael T. Williams, who is like most famous for playing Bubba Gump in Forrest Gump, plays like the diabetic who's like best friends with like Cameron Poe, and it's like it's just like floor to ceiling, just like when you look at that poster, it's like fuck, this has got so many like just absolute like I don't know like legends of cinema, especially like amazing character actors and stuff like that, and it just feels like it was so much fun to film, and the fact that that film as well, it overlapped with the filming of Face Off, and that kind of 1-2 punch in Cage's career is just absolutely fucking crazy.
Oh yeah, it's I can't think of many people who had that run of films. Like even without it's even ignoring the fact he did Leaving Las Vegas, then The Rock. It
Yeah.
was The Rock, Con Air, Face Off. Like it is three of the best like action films in general.
Yeah.
I also like that in Con Air, which again just as underrated as John Cusack in it, is Nicolas Cage's abs.
Yeah, it's
Like he's weirdly shredded.
my theory is that it was a mixture of Leaving Las Vegas and The Kiss of Death that got him those action roles. Because
Yeah.
like The Kiss of Death, everyone could see, oh, he can bulk up and he can be kind of tough. So they were like, he's got some potential as an action star. And then obviously Leaving Las Vegas, like, this boy can fucking act. Like, not like people who were like keeping tabs on him before then already knew that, but like on the world stage winning that Oscar, they were like, oh no, this
Yeah.
guy has got the chops to like really hold a picture. And like,
Yeah.
like he proved it. And it goes beyond that kind of trilogy, like up and like, I think it's up until like, I don't know, you could argue like the mid 2000s. He's got like this really interesting kind of run of films and has worked with, yeah, I always say it, he's worked with arguably some of the best directors the world has ever seen, whether it's Brian De
Oh
Palma,
yeah.
Ridley Scott, Martin Scorsese with Bringing Out the Dead, like, yeah, so John Woo, like,
Well, again, like you said, yeah, Coen Brothers.
yeah, it's
Um,
Francis Ford
well,
Coppola.
yeah, well, I mean,
I'll
not-
throw that
not-
one in there.
yeah, yeah, not a director, but Charlie Kaufman. Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, worked with and played him.
Exactly. So yeah, about that night, like, what were some of the standout moments for you? Were there kind of like moments where you're like, I'm just so glad I'm here, like I'm loving this whole experience?
So, I mean, for me, it's the very beginning. It is so we were settled down. There's actually so we went with or a friend of mine had already got tickets there, and we'd sat with them. It's like, oh, so I've got a friend I haven't seen in a while. We're going to be watching films until 9 in the morning. And then as soon as Nicolas Cage's name came up in the opening credits for The Rock, everyone cheered and applauded.
Mhm.
And it's just like, yeah, this was the right choice. It was like you said, I've never had that experience watching a film before, and it just perfectly kind of set the stall out that this is what it's going to be. And then, like you said, just the sheer audience reaction to the films was like, yeah, it's not like not that you feel weird for enjoying those films anyway, but rarely are you in a whole crowd of 100 odd people all enjoying the same thing, unironically.
Yeah, that is the thing. I think there were like there was maybe like a couple of outliers there who were there for the like the ironic factor of it. Do you know what I mean? Just to kind of like put a notch
Yeah.
on their kind of bedpost and be like, oh, isn't it funny? I went to a Nicolas Cage all-nighter, and it's like, nah, like it's a decent batch of films that we saw, and like, if anything, it's a real statement to prove that Nick Cage is one of the greatest actors of all time. Like, so in regards to obviously
Oh, definitely.
the exciting, the fun moments, were there were there any bugbears you had with the evening? Were there any I don't know, well yeah, the crowd. Was there anyone in the crowd who got you go, or was there anything about it that kind of irked you in any way?
I mean, there's always going to be, like you said, someone in the crowd. So I know there was a bit of. I'm fine with audience participation in a marathon like that, but don't talk through the whole thing.
Yeah.
Like, if there's clearly parts where people, like you said, cheering, not heckling or anything, but don't just sit and have a conversation.
Yeah.
Like it's 12 hours of films, so like it's fine to leave occasionally, hang out in the foyer, come back a bit refreshed. But it's there. So I didn't have the. I couldn't hear the talking, but I could hear the people shushing it. So I think they might have been sat near you and Darryl, but I could hear someone shushing, and it's like, yeah, that's not on, guys. We're all here for the same reason. Let's just watch this film. Another weird part was I'm assuming it was because of tiredness, but it could have been because it was the last film was Mandy at 7 a.m. Definitely hallucinated a little bit. Because there's obviously lighting down the side in like the aisles next to the seats, and the way they were flickering, and because I was tired, it constantly felt like someone was about to walk down the aisle. So like my peripheral vision kind of went a bit weird. I think talking to Graham, I think he had similar. It was like, if you had similar, it's not just me being a freak. It's clearly something that happened. But that was the only moment where I thought, maybe I'm not going to stay awake until this ends.
So another thing I wanted to ask, obviously, what in your heart of hearts did you want the mystery film to be? And like, what were your did you have any guesses as to what that film would be? Or were you happy to leave it to chance and trust the Prince Charles?
So I mean, I will always trust the Prince Charles cinema.
Mm-hmm.
Let's get that out there. I had a couple of guesses, and I have there's a couple of films that I think might have worked a bit better. So for me, my kind of guesses were because so the friends we were with clocked on that it was chronological.
Yep.
And they were like, okay, so that narrows it down to this period. I think you mentioned, I'm assuming it was mentioned before as well, the Prince Charles Cinema had said it hadn't been a film they'd shown before, which kind of narrowed it down a bit. I didn't have the extensive list. I was feeling like if you're going to follow... Because I think the problem you have with a marathon like that is The Rock, Con Air, and Face Off are very clearly... They're basically a trilogy, right? Like they share so much DNA that anything you show afterwards is going to feel a little bit on the like you've had the trilogy and then you've got the others.
Yeah.
So I was thinking maybe something like I didn't think they would go serious. So that takes your 8mm, possibly even like Snake Eyes, Wind Talkers. That's all off the table. So I went straight in with Gone with 60 Seconds. I thought we might get something like that, possibly kind of Ghost Rider, a bit more over the top, and then we didn't. We had Drive Angry, which is a film. For me, I think the difficulty in planning anything like that is Mandy is so weird.
Mm-hmm.
And it's such like a unique film. You would want... So I think something like, which you've mentioned before, like I think Willy's Wonderland would have been a really good bridge between action Nicolas Cage and really weird Nicolas Cage.
Yeah.
So I think the choice would you need like a bridge film between the two, or maybe you save Mandy for... Again, have an all-nighter, which would be a tough one to get through, but I would still go. Like, Mandy, Color Out of Space, Willy's Wonderland. Just lean in on all of the really over-the-top. Adaptation would probably fit in there as well. Even possibly Raising Arizona. That's a weird old film, the more you think about it. But... we had Drive Angry, which as I said, I watched Jiu-Jitsu on my birthday. I'm a fan of weird, good bad movies. So, it was a bit of a palate cleanser. It was fun to not have to fully pay attention, so to speak. But it was fun. It's such a stupid film.
I would have loved if the Prince Charles at that moment just like I don't know, an usher came out and presented everyone with 3D glasses and said like, do you know, a bit like, oh, we get to experience it in 3D as well. That I think that would have kept me
Why?
awake. Like, and on that point, did you have any plans like throughout the night, like going in, where you're like, I'm gonna stay awake the whole night, or like, if this happens, or this is a film I might have a nap through, or yeah, what was your kind of plan in that regard?
So the plan was to, I was gonna be water, and I was gonna see what happened. I knew I wasn't going to fall asleep during the first three because it's The Rock, Con Air, and Face Off.
Yep.
I'm there for that. The mystery film would depend what the mystery film was. But I also knew, so my plan was I was going to stay awake for the whole thing, and I managed to. But I also knew my risk area was the virtually dialogueless first 45 minutes of Mandy. Because the first half of Mandy is beautiful, but nobody says anything. And it's 7 a.m. There was a bit of nodding off, but I managed to where you wake yourself up when your head hits your chest kind of thing. So nearly succumbed there, but I did. It's also the kind of film, like, for all I knew, I fell asleep for 5 minutes and didn't realize. It's so weird. But so I'm saying that like it's a bad thing. I have so much time for that film. I think it's incredible, but it was 7 a.m.
Yeah, I've said it on this episode already, but like it's almost like that film, like them programming it at 7 a.m. It's like they're willing you to be like, I dare you to stay awake during this first 45 minutes, because it is, like you said, and the fact that it's like this hazy psychedelic movie, it's just got this air of like, if you're in that mood, you can just like sink into it and drift away into sleep, and like you would be none the wiser.
Well,
right?
that's the thing. The problem is I generally sleep to music.
Mm-hmm.
So there's like a 10-15 minute sequence where it's just music.
Yeah.
And I think my body just kind of started going, oh, it's bedtime now. I'm just gonna start shutting things off. Yeah. And there was definitely a part during Mandy where everyone's had it, where I'm watching it, I'm enjoying it, and then I realise, oh wait, no, my eyes are closed. It's I'm not actually watching it. I'm just kind of remembering what I've seen. But it was definitely like from what you said about it, was definitely a point prover at the end. I think a lot of people had made the conscious decision that they were there for the unofficial trilogy. So I think there was definitely like there was a shedding point after Face Off finished. So I think we lost a couple of people there. There was definitely another shedding point from people who hadn't seen Drive Angry, realizing what kind of film it was. If we hadn't talked about it yet, Nicolas Cage is chased by Satan's accountant.
Yeah, and
it's
got some very icky stuff involving Amber Heard as well. Like that's just like, in kind of 2021 eyes, is a bit like, ugh, like this film.
There was a lot of Johnny Depp jokes going around the cinema, I think.
Yeah, there's kind of a lot of like I don't know, and for a film called Drive Angry, Cage doesn't seem that angry.
Yeah, it's like the driving I get, but it was also the first film of the night. Well, technically the only film of the night that didn't say the name of the film in the film.
Yes.
So it was Drive Angry was the registration plate on the car, but they never actually said it. And there was always a big cheer whenever. So obviously, Welcome to the Rock.
Yep.
They mentioned Con Air. I think John Malkovich says Con Air in Con Air. Face Off is a very high Nicolas Cage saying he wants to take his face off. And then Mandy's a character name in Mandy, so that's kind of cheating. But yeah, it was a weird thing to notice, because I think we were always just on the edge of we're big fans of the. They said the name of the thing in the thing
Yeah.
whenever it's mentioned.
That you've called them out. You've thrown the gauntlet at the Prince Charles. They should have really programmed it that all 5 films have the name of the film.
Yeah, that
spoken by a character in the
that's
film.
what we were
It would
there
be
for.
beautiful.
But yeah, Drive Angry. I mean, like there was a shedding point during that, and then not so much with Mandy, just because I think people fell asleep. Like if people were going to fall asleep that had stayed, it is the first half of Mandy. No one was sleeping through the last half because that's chainsaw duels, LSD fueled Hell's Angels. It's an experience. As soon as Nicolas Cage screams in the toilet, I think that's when people were like, we're on now. This is the 4th or 5th wind hitting me. But it was, oh god, yeah. I was.
So, what were your feelings going into Mandy? Because obviously, like, I'm not sure if you like. I was stepping outside between each film and going out into daylight before that film, and then realizing, like, it's a new day. It's a new day. Like, it's light, and
yeah. So I went kind of the like. I went the Vegas casino route. So I didn't see natural light.
Yeah.
So I would leave the cinema, but I would stay in like the downstairs foyer. Because like you said, I think as soon as my body clock realized it was bright outside, that's where I would psychologically fall apart. Yeah, but I was, like I said, I played a pretty heavy game of rugby that day. So I would go out into the foyer and I would just be like, no one wants to be the guy stretching. So I was just kind of subtly stretching next to a pillar, just trying to stop my calves and quads from seizing up. But yeah, that's actually a recommendation I would give to people is unless you're a smoker, because don't smoke indoors, stay downstairs if you can. Like, I don't stay in your seat the whole time because that's asking for problems. But if you're going to walk around, walk down the aisles or outstairs in the outside in the downstairs foyer bit, because, like you said, going into Mandy knowing it was 7 a.m. I was, like I said, I'd watched it before. I'd loved it. I'd known what to expect, and I was very aware that if I was going to fall asleep, it would be that first hour.
Well, I felt like because I'd gone outside when I like sat down for Mandy, I just felt dirty. I felt really grubby in the fact that it's like I felt like I was up all night doing coke or something. Do you know what I mean? It's that like realization that, like,
Yeah,
I've wasted a night and like looking round at all the people who were there, like when the marathon finished. I was like, I just want to get out of this situation. I just want to go home to my bed, have a cup of tea and a shower, and never speak to any of you ever again. And then obviously, like, a few days passed and cooler heads prevailed. And I was like, you just watched 5 films over a night. You haven't had a night like doing a load of drugs. You're all right, mate.
Well, it was great. So we finished this rugby match. We had a couple of post-game beers, and I was kind of sitting with the team. And Graham was picking me up from the clubhouse to then kind of go to the cinema. And he messaged me saying he was outside, so I kind of like told the guys, it's like, right, I'm going. I'm actually going to the cinema. And they're like, oh, what are you going to see? And it's like, oh, I'm just going to see 5 Nicolas Cage films. And it was like a record scratch. It was like, sorry, did you just say 5 Nicolas Cage films? It's like, yeah. And it's like, when does that finish? It's like 9 a.m. And then there was silence. And I think one of the players just went, they're playing Face Off though, right? It's like, yes, they are. And then I think I just left them in the midst of a Nicolas Cage conversation. It was like, yeah, I like you guys.
Beautiful. Beautiful. I think I've got to ask you about this because what was Graham's reaction to seeing Mandy for the first time from your perspective? Because obviously it was his first time watching Mandy at that all-nighter.
Yeah, so I think he kind of knew it was going to be a weird one. Like I think on our podcast I talked about Mandy. It has popped up before on just how kind of batshit mental it is, and watching Graham watch it was, if anything, more. It was what was keeping me awake because he would be watching it, but like so low down in his seat, and I think he had like his hoodie on, kind of scrunched up, and I kept thinking he'd fallen asleep. And then you'd just look at him, and his eyes would just be wide open, staring at the screen. It was like, yeah, man, it's a weird one, isn't it? And then occasionally, just turn to look at me, just like, this is as weird as I think it is, isn't it? It's like, yeah, it's an odd one. And then also knowing after conversations a couple of days later, he was also vaguely hallucinating people walking up and down the aisles. So it's. I would definitely. I don't know if I could recommend watching Mandy for the first time at 7 a.m., but I definitely recommend a sleep-deprived viewing of it at some point.
Yeah, so I'm fortunate enough to know one of the producers of Mandy, Daniel Noah.
Oh, wow.
And I can't wait to like share this episode with him and kind of like tell him the kind of like hallucinatory nature of the film, because I know for one he will absolutely adore that aspect of it and just be able to like really that is what the film's about.
Oh yeah, so the moment my brain imploded was it's when Mandy's drugged and she's in front of like the cult leader guy,
Linus Roach,
whose dad plays Ken Barlow.
Yeah.
Which was a fun discovery, like trivia discovery afterwards. And there's a scene where he's talking to the camera, and her face is gradually becomes more and more overlaid over his face. And it's an incredible scene. It's incredibly directed, and my brain could not handle it at 8 a.m. It was just like, I don't know if because I was so tired. It was like, is that happening? Or am I asleep? Am I watching it? What is actually going on? And I think, like I said, I think a couple of people had fallen asleep just because of the nature of the first half of Mandy. Like I said, it's very like dialogue light. It's very effective. And then everyone else, I'm fairly sure, was just tripping balls. Just a mix of just the film. And I was very close to saying tripping balls because of Mandy, but that's a different sentence. Tripping balls because of the film and the fact they'd been already awake for 10, 11 hours. But God, yeah, it was a hell of an experience.
I know somebody who works at the Prince Charles, Phil, the general manager, and he spoke to a mutual friend of ours, Jonathan, and said that Petros was just like in a weird haze, like when I saw him, and like I think like that was how I felt throughout Mandy. I was just like in this weird haze, and I had like a similar experience to you with that very scene of the kind of like faces melding together, and how like I was just like, I don't know, like almost looking for the seams in it, and like I was like, this is not the time to be looking at how this was technically done, and just like I think I said it to Graham, like that experience of watching that film at that time, it felt like my brain was leaking out of my ears by the end of it. I was just like
that sums it up perfectly.
So you've already given us a tip of how to survive one of these all-night marathons. Is there any other tips you would give to anyone who was thinking about whether it's the Nicolas Cage marathon or whatever? Like, what would be your tips for surviving the night?
I mean, like it's for me, kind of the biggest things are, again, if you're not a smoker, avoid natural light. Really helps. I am an energy drinker, so that definitely helped kind of me through it. But it definitely, you have to go in hoping you don't have to.
Yes.
And then if you feel like I managed to stay away from it until after the third film. And then it was like, right, if I'm going to stay awake, I need this now. So leave it until as late as you can if you're going to have the caffeine. And I think just kind of go in with the knowledge that you might fall asleep, and if you do, it's fine.
Yeah.
Like you said, like it's the films are always going to be there. It is the most fun part of the experience was just experience it with everyone there. Like it was such a fun way to watch it. And I mean, I think Graham fell asleep at one point. The other person we're with fell asleep. People around us did, but they still all loved the night when they left.
Exactly.
Like it's not going to ruin the night because you fell asleep. Like it's a natural thing. So don't beat yourself up about it if you do. And if you can, try and get some annual leave in, because you're not gonna. The Sunday isn't enough to recover from that if you're early 30s. It's like I think I messaged you today. I think I've recovered from it now.
Yeah.
It was a weird one. I felt like, I don't know about you, but I felt like so the day after you've had a long haul flight.
Mm-hmm.
So I was basically jet lagged. It was such a weird feeling all day, but yeah. Oh, and other advice just for future recovery from a marathon, like jet lag, sleep for say 3 hours, and then push through till your the normal time you would go to sleep. Like
I just pushed through the whole day and went to bed at 9 p.m. that night. So like I was awake from 7:30 on Saturday till 9 p.m. on Sunday, and felt myself getting ill throughout Sunday, like daytime. And then by the time I went to bed, I was like, oh, I've got a cold. And then I've just kind of felt the repercussions the whole week. So like, I don't know if that was like bound to happen anyway, or like it was the fact of like I was getting a cold, and then it's like, oh, you're gonna put yourself through over 35 hours of no sleep, and then like really deplete your immune system that really just gave a kicking to like bring it on a lot quicker.
Yeah. Yeah, it's I think you just need to embrace the fact you're going to feel like shit.
Yeah.
What helped us with the marathon as well is also bring like water or fruit juice or something like that. If all you're drinking is caffeine, you're going to have a bad time. But yeah, no, I felt awful the day afterwards. Completely worth it. Don't get me wrong. I am. There are no regrets for going, but God, I felt awful on Sunday.
Amazing. Well, obviously, yeah, you host the podcast Nobody Asked For along with Graham. Where can people find that podcast and keep up to date with everything that you guys are doing?
So you can find us wherever you get your podcasts. We are on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, and we also now have Patreon. And you can find all of our links, all of our episodes on the podcast nobodyaskfor.co.uk. So go over there, check out. Our latest episode was very meta. So it was our first, actually today when we're recording is our first birthday as a podcast, along with a lot of indie movie podcasts, because I think we all started at the same time. So our latest episode was films we haven't talked about yet, so films we haven't been able to crowbar into episodes, and the episode before that was movies we would have set in space. So it's a lot of fun. And like I said, yeah, everything is at the podcast nobodyaskfor.co.uk.
And where can people find you on socials as well if they want to?
So socials, Instagram is just the podcast Nobody Asked For. Twitter is Nobody Asked For Pod with the number 4, and that's kind of where we're most active. And I'm sure Graham mentioned it before, but Indie Movie Podcast is a lovely place to be. So yeah, come and argue with us on those, because in the end, that's all the podcast ever was. It's just the arguments we would have in a pub about film. So we love it when people message us with episode ideas or what they thought about episodes. It's been a great year.
Yeah, that's exactly what I love about it. That's, I think, what podcasting should be, right? Is like the kind of conversations you would have with people you know or people you don't know about films you love or don't like or whatever, and just kind of have fun, and then people are going to enjoy it, right?
Yeah, exactly. I'd listen to it, and arguably that's its biggest seal of approval.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much, Ian, for coming and chatting to me about this experience that I think I've said to everyone who's guested on this special episode that we're all now linked, like, by our souls in this kind of experience that we've shared together. We're like, I don't know, in years to come, we'll be like old Nam buddies, going, like, speaking about that fateful battle we had at the Prince Charles on that fateful night.
Yeah, just sharing our sleep deluded Nicolas Cage tattoos we all decided to get.
Yeah.
It'll be great.
Perfect. Thanks again, man, for coming on and joining me.
Thanks for having me.
Well, there you go, guys. Thank you so much for joining me for this very special, somewhat recap live report of a fantastic event. And obviously, if you are in the London area, please do check out the Prince Charles Cinema. They have another Nick Cage all-nighter coming up as well in November. I'll be sure to put the link in the show notes to grab tickets for that, but always check out what they got going on. They've always got some great stuff, whether it's Nick Cage or otherwise. And as always, if you've enjoyed the podcast, please don't hesitate to leave a rating and review. 5 stars, please, on Apple Podcasts, Acast, or wherever you're listening to this podcast right now. You can also buy me a cup of coffee on the coffee website. So that's ko-fi.com, or Patreon, where you can sign up and give me money each month. And yeah, I've got some cool things coming on Patreon, so keep an eye out for that. So as always, guys, I've been Petros Patsilivus. I've been caged in. You've been amazing. Catch you next time.